Chapter 6:15. The Cornucopia Assembly opened with a bang. The Cornucopia Assembly, the headquarters of the World Chamber of Commerce, suddenly became the focus of the entire cultivation world. The scale of the Cornucopia Assembly this time was far larger than any previous one. The number of participants greatly exceeded the expectations of the World Chamber of Commerce, and the entire Cornucopia Assembly was already overcrowded. At the end of the day, the reason why the heroes of the cultivation world were willing to participate in the banquet was probably because of the restriction-breaking pill. Crooks and honest folk mixed together. And this was often the time when accidents were most likely to occur. The World Chamber of Commerce had no choice but to mobilize experts from their branches. The most shocking thing was that soul formation experts, who were rarely seen in the past, also appeared in the Cornucopia Assembly. From time to time, there would be a burst of exclamations from the crowd moving around the cornucopia. Everyone would always see the flow of people separate at the entrance of the various countries' shops, only to see the legendary lord of the soul formation stage, surrounded by their respective forces, settle down in their own shops. Hua Zongming of the Dian Nation is here. The crowd rushed towards the Dian Nation's shop. Pei Fong of the top 10 experts of the soul formation final stage is here. The crowd rushed to the street where the Millennium Nation's shop was located. Hu Changsho of the Eastern Nation is here. The crowd turned again. The lords appeared one after another, shocking the low-level cultivators who had come to pay their respects to the grand event. They happily roamed all over the place after hearing the news, just to catch a glimpse of those legendary figures at the top. I'm as fat as him. I'm as thin as him. I'm about the same size as him. My nose is the same as his. Ah, our hairstyles are the same. Every time an expert appeared, many cultivators would be excited. They found that they could actually find something in common with themselves from these legendary experts. Even if they had the same full beard, it could make them as excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. For those cultivators struggling at the bottom of society, being able to find even a tiny bit of similarity with themselves from these legendary experts would undoubtedly magnify it in their hearts by 1,000,000 times. Their originally gloomy and bumpy path of cultivation would instantly be filled with light. On the first day of the assembly, so many top experts had arrived. This was unprecedented. They ran around tirelessly, admiring the legendary soul formation experts one after another. Wen Lanfeng, the world's second expert, Wen Lanfeng is here. Wen Lanfeng is here too. The excitement that lingered on the streets immediately reached a climax, and the crowd surged forward like water. A few people couldn't hold back and soared into the sky. During the Treasure Basin meeting, except for the law enforcement guards and soul formation experts, no one else was allowed to fly in the Treasure Basin. Otherwise, they would be severely punished. This was an agreement that all the countries had agreed to. After all, everyone had their own businesses here, and too much chaos was not good for anyone. On the roof of the street, an expert at the end of the Crossing Calamities stage suddenly turned his head to look at the people who had flown up. He waved his hand and shouted, "Capture them! Kill them without mercy!" More than a dozen figures suddenly appeared from all directions, immediately blocking the three people in the air. The expressions of the three of them changed drastically, and they immediately came to their senses. They realized that they had done something stupid in a moment of impulse. One of them immediately begged, "I didn't do it on purpose, give me more." Ah! A few screams followed. The law enforcement guards didn't listen to any explanation at all. They obeyed and killed the three of them on the spot. The three people's hot blood splashed in the air, and several severed corpses smashed into the crowd, cooling down the overheated atmosphere on the street. Sikongju, who was searching midway, witnessed this scene with his own eyes. He looked at the person on the roof, who ordered to kill without mercy, and nodded slightly with a look of approval. He was worried that there were too many people, and that everyone would be too excited, and something would happen. Now this decisive kill had produced a great effect. What made Sikongju most satisfied was that this person was none other than his third disciple, Mu Lianxiu. Mu Lianxiu was the law enforcement chief of the Treasure Basin meeting, and he was responsible for maintaining the order of the meeting. When Lanfeng frowned slightly, as he looked at the respectful gazes around him, He didn't expect his appearance to cause such a big commotion. He didn't like to enjoy the feeling of being superior to others. His figure flashed, and he disappeared without a trace. My clothes! My clothes! A young cultivator in the crowd was pulling at his grayish-white robe, as he spoke incoherently. A fellow disciple next to him asked suspiciously, "What happened to your clothes?" "So Senior Wen likes to wear grayish-white robes just like me." The cultivator danced excitedly. "TSK." The fellow disciple sneered. "Do you think your cultivation will be the same, just because your clothes are the same? Idiot." The cultivator said solemnly. "That's not necessarily true. My taste is similar to Senior Wen's, which means that our understanding of cultivation will also have something in common. In other words, I'm also very likely to become a soul formation expert one day." Senior brother, where are you going? Wait for me." In the unused attic on the top floor of the Sleeping Spring loft, it was elegantly decorated, and the incense burner placed on the horizontal table was emitting green smoke. Yin sat on the side and sipped on a small cup of tea. She silently looked up and down at the Allure Beauty, standing in front of the wooden window. She didn't know why Nyoyud wanted her to take this person in. Could it be that he took a fancy to her beauty? The Allure Beauty had been watching the movements on the street in front of the wooden window. The waves in her heart hadn't stopped. The legendary soul formation experts appeared one after another. It really shocked her. Yin got up and gently walked to her side. She glanced at the lively street below and casually asked, "You said you came to Cornucopia to find someone. Who are you looking for? If it's convenient, you might as well tell me. I've been in Cornucopia for many years. Maybe I've heard of him." The Allure Beauty turned around and was silent for a moment. Then she smiled sweetly and said, "The person I'm looking for is called Yu Qianqiu." Yu Qianqiu? Yin was stunned. "Did I hear that right? You came to Cornucopia to find that murderous butcher Yu Qianqiu?" The Allure Beauty nodded with a smile, but there was an imperceptible bitterness in her smile. Yin smiled bitterly. "Then I'm afraid you've come to the wrong place. Now that there are so many soul formation experts here, almost all of them are people that Yu Qianqiu has offended. How could he come to Cornucopia at this time? Isn't he courting death? He should come." The Allure Beauty looked at the street. She thought that there was no reason to be afraid of him, just because he was the disciple of the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun. However, she had never heard anyone say that he had a relationship with Bai Changchun. "Are you so sure?" Yin was a little surprised. Then she nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe, with Wen Lanfeng's support, and Wen Lanfeng's coming to Cornucopia, that Yu Qianqiu might really come. However, I'm afraid that he won't show up openly. In that case, how can you find him? There's a way." The Allure Beauty pulled out a zither and smiled. "I'll sing." Yin's eyes lit up. "Yes, I heard that Yu Qianqiu is very talented. Every zither song he makes is rare in the world. Unfortunately, I've only heard of his name. I've never heard him in person. Could it be that you can play and sing Yu Qianqiu's songs? To tell you the truth, Yu Qianqiu and I are old acquaintances. He once wrote a song for me. There shouldn't be anyone else who can play it. If he comes to Cornucopia, I hope he'll follow me." The Allure Beauty smiled. "Old acquaintances with Yu Qianqiu?" Yin muttered. She sized him up with a profound gaze and said with a faint smile, "If I'm not mistaken, you should be from the cultivation world of China, right? Otherwise, with your appearance and cultivation above the tribulation passing stage, I'm afraid it'd be hard for me not to know who you are." The Enchantress of Allure smiled, but did not say anything. Yin did not ask much, as long as she knew what was going on. She smiled and said, "If Sister Yi were to show her face and sing here, I'm afraid that the reputation of my Sleeping Spring loft would be even higher." Outside Cornucopia, a passage appeared in the roiling clouds. It was a special passage for the lords and spirit-severing experts of various countries. 6 disciples of the World Commerce Company stood guard in the air to guide them. At this moment, a figure flashed out of the passage. The 6 disciples bowed in unison. It was none other than Sikongju. Sikongju silently floated in the air, looking into the distance. Clearly he was waiting for someone. The 6 disciples looked at each other. They didn't know who was coming for the second in command of the World Commerce Company to personally welcome them. When Lanfeng came, he didn't come out to welcome them. Could it be the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun? The 6 disciples looked at each other, their hearts thumping. If they could see the mysterious Bai Changchun with their own eyes, it would be a blessing of 3 lifetimes. In fact, the 6 of them were thinking the wrong thing. If it was really Bai Changchun who came personally, it would be strange if Yin Baikong could sit still in God of Wealth Peak. He would have come out to welcome him. Moreover, none of the lords who arrived early would be able to sit still. They would all obediently come out to welcome him. Not long later, 2 black dots appeared in the distance. In the blink of an eye, a man and a woman stopped in front of the special passage. The man stood at the side with his hands tied. The woman had a graceful figure. Her green robes fluttered in the wind. She wore a green veil bamboo hat that covered her face, revealing her black hair. "Greetings, godly doctor." Sikong Ju bowed, then raised his hand and said, "My master is waiting on the mountain. Please." This man and woman were Lu Yanqing and Xian Laosan. The 6 disciples secretly clicked their tongues. So it was the world's #1 beauty, Lu Yanqing. They wanted to carefully look at the face behind the green veil bamboo hat, but they didn't dare to be rude. Just as they were about to enter the passage, someone shouted from afar, "Is that Lu Yanqing in front?" They paused at the same time. Looking back, they saw a flying magic tool flying towards them at high speed from another direction. When they arrived, they saw Nong Zhu looking at them with a smile. Behind him stood 2 women. Sikong Ju was slightly startled. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Mr. Nong Zhu. You're welcome." Nong Zhu waved his hand. He stared at Lu Yanqing and sized her up. "Tsk. Lu Yanqing, how rare. Why are you here?" "Nong Zhu, you're here." Her voice was as light as an orchid in an empty valley, and as clear as an oriole's cry. Lu Yan's gaze behind the curtain landed on Ziyi's body and said softly, "Ziyi is here too." Chapter 616. Greetings, Senior Lu. Ziyi stuck out her tongue and smiled. Obviously, it was not the first time she saw Lu Yanqing. Furong did not know any of them, but she also followed suit and bowed. "Nongzhu, who is this lady?" Lu Yanqing looked at Furong and asked in confusion. Nongzhu laughed and said, "Her name is Furong, an old friend's disciple. She came with me to see the cornucopia." Nongzhu had many friends, but not many could be considered old friends. Lu Yanqing's gaze suddenly stopped at Furong's waist. On the black jade pendant with cloud patterns, there was a frightening word Bai engraved on it. Nongzhu's old friend's disciple? Lu Yanqing's breathing quickened slightly. It was not the first time she saw this jade pendant, but now it was worn on this slightly shy woman. Then her master is. So it's Lady Furong. Lu Yanqing's gaze moved, and she rarely took the initiative to greet a junior. Old Xian had seen Furong in Daong Kingdom, but they had never spoken. This girl was hanging out with Nongzhu at that time, so he did not find it strange. But seeing that his master valued her so much, he was somewhat curious. Sikongju was not blind, so he naturally saw the jade pendant. He had also seen this jade pendant before. His pupils suddenly shrank, and the expression on his face twitched. He looked at Furong and swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He rarely cupped his hands and said to Furong, "So it's Lady Furong." The 6 disciples were also not fools. They also felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Sikongju actually took the initiative to bow to a junior? The gazes of the 6 people also fell on Furong with uncertainty. Who was this? Furong timidly returned the greeting to the 2. She did not know what the jade pendant on her waist meant, and did not know how much pressure it was for the people who knew this jade pendant. Nongzhu looked on from the side, and was quite satisfied. She admired herself for using Yu Qianqiu to seduce Furong, and then using Furong to steal a jade pendant from Bai Changchun. It was a rare opportunity to borrow the tiger's might. She laughed and said, "Don't dawdle here. Let's go in first." "Please." Sikongju waved his hand solemnly. Then, he led them into the cornucopia, and the group headed straight for the God of Wealth Peak. Not long after Yin Baikong sent Niu Yit away, Sikongju arrived with a few people. Nongzhu retracted her flying magical item, then immediately cupped her fists at Yin Baikong and said, "Yin Baikong, congratulations! You're going to be rich again." "Nongzhu is here." Yin Baikong replied indifferently. He never had a good impression of Nongzhu. This guy relied on the fact that Bai Changchun was his good friend to never put him in his eyes. If it weren't for Bai Changchun, he would have killed him several times when they didn't get along. Nongzhu smiled and did not take it seriously. In his heart he thought, I know that you and Grandpa don't get along, so I specially got you a nemesis today. Yin Baikong smiled at Lu Yanqing, raised his hand and laughed. Rare guest, rare guest. My cornucopia is greatly honored by Divine Physician Lu's presence, haha. Brother Yin is too humble. I hope I won't disturb you. Lu Yanqing bowed. Hee. I can't even invite an esteemed guest. How can I disturb you? I actually hope you come and disturb me every day. Yin Baikong laughed heartily, then turned to Sikong Ju and instructed. Arrange a quiet courtyard halfway up the mountain. Don't let anyone disturb Divine Physician Lu. Most of the other powers had their own places to stay in Cornucopia, but Lu Yanqing's Spirit Fong Valley did not have any shops in Cornucopia, so naturally, they had no place to stay. They couldn't let one of the four eccentrics stay in an inn in Cornucopia, right? Yin Baikong was not that bad. Moreover, Lu Yanqing was such a delicate beauty. Although Yin Baikong was old, he had always been interested in protecting beauties. Most importantly, there were too many people in the cultivation world who owed Lu Yanqing a favor, including Yin Baikong himself, who owed Spirit Fong Valley a favor. Don't look at how she stood aloof from worldly affairs, and her cultivation wasn't very high, but no one could underestimate her power. As for whether she used it or not, that was another matter. But then again, to be able to be recognized as one of the four eccentrics, none of them were simple. Yin Baikong, arrange a quiet courtyard for me as well. Look at me. It's not safe for me to wander around with two girls. Nongzhu asked without any trace of politeness. Yin Baikong coldly glanced at her and snorted. You, Mr. Nongzhu, have a wide range of connections. Do you think you don't have a place to stay? You're not joking, right? His words meant rejection. At the side, Lu Yanqing was speechless. She glanced at Hibiscus through the green veil, then closed her red lips again. She wanted to say something to Yin Baikong, but after thinking about it, she felt that it was inappropriate. After all, this wasn't her territory, so she couldn't help Yin Baikong make decisions. Then forget it. Nongzhu shrugged her shoulders indifferently, then turned to Hibiscus apologetically. Hibiscus, my face is a little small, and I've made you suffer. Come, let's go to the inn at the foot of the mountain, and see if there are any empty rooms. I believe that if we look from one to another, we'll definitely find one. Zi, come, let's go down the mountain. It's all right, Hibiscus said weakly. She didn't think that there was any difference between staying at the foot of the mountain and the top. Zi pouted her lips at Yin Baikong. Yin Baikong snorted coldly. This Nongzhu was obviously pretending to be pitiful. How could this old man's god of wealth peak be a place that anyone could stay at? Lu Yanqing's expression became strange. Why did she feel that Nongzhu was deliberately tricking Yin Baikong? If Yin Baikong really offended that person, with that person's thunderous methods, he wouldn't be able to argue at that time. This cornucopia association. What a joke. If this girl was really that person's disciple, then she would have offended that person's entire family. Who would dare to not give that person face? Sikong Ju's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. His master still hadn't discovered it. He hurriedly moved in front of Nongzhu and awkwardly cupped his hands. Mr. Nongzhu, please wait a moment. I'll discuss it with my master. No need. Your god of wealth peak isn't a place that ordinary people can stay at. The three of us are a little small, so we don't dare to disturb you. I'd better bring my two girls along to beg for a place to stay. Nongzhu sneered sinisterly. Yet his face revealed an expression that said, just you wait and see. I'll teach you a lesson when the time comes. Lu Yanqing's red lips slightly opened as she secretly smiled bitterly. This Nongzhu really wanted to trick Yin Baikong. Begging on the streets. Sikong Ju almost choked to death by these words. He repeatedly smiled apologetically. Mister, please wait a moment. Before he could finish, he heard Yin Baikong shout. Sikong, what are you trying to do? This was really rebellious. A disciple actually went against his master's words. Master, Old man, take a good look first. Sikong-ju almost cried. He hurriedly transmitted his voice to Im Baikong. Master, look at that girl called Furong. The jade pendant on her waist. This disciple seems to have seen it somewhere before. Since things had already escalated to this point, he didn't dare to say it out loud. If he said it out loud, it would put his master in a difficult position. At that time, he would definitely blame himself for not saying it earlier. He could only use a roundabout way to remind his master, and let his master decide for himself. Im Baikong's face was full of anger as he casually swept a glance. But it was this casual glance that caused Im Baikong's expression to stiffen. He couldn't tell what kind of expression was on his face, but it was very rich and interesting. The half-palm-sized black jade pendant with cloud patterns didn't seem to be very eye-catching. But the most frightening thing was that there was a Bai character engraved on it. If you asked Im Baikong if he had seen this thing before, he would tell you that he had seen it before. Moreover, he had seen it several times. Don't look down on such an unremarkable little thing. But to some people, it was like a death warrant. Im Baikong currently had this kind of feeling. The jade pendant that Bai Changchun had carried with him for many years. Why would it be on her? Im Baikong kept asking himself this question in his mind. Miss, where did you get this jade pendant from? Im Baikong pointed at Furong's waist with a complicated expression. After hearing Nongju's pitiful words, Furong really didn't have a good impression of this old woman. Plus, she was too innocent and didn't know how to hide her likes and dislikes. With a face full of disgust, she said, My master gave it to me. What does it have to do with you? Im Baikong almost choked on her words. A mere core formation stage little girl actually dared to talk to him. One of the top 10 experts in the world. A cultivator of the late soul severing stage. In such a manner. She must be tired of living. But without a doubt, this also showed that although her cultivation level wasn't high, she didn't put him in her eyes at all. How many people in the world dared to not put a cultivator of the late soul severing stage in their eyes? Not to mention this little girl. This jade pendant belonged to Bai Changchun, and she said her master gave it to her. Then her master is... Im Baikong's expression twitched. He angrily stared at Nongju and fiercely transmitted his voice. Nongju, what do you mean by this? Are you deliberately tricking me? Are you trying to sow discord between me and Bai Changchun? Arrogant. Scared you to death. Nongju's stomach was already overjoyed. But on the surface, she coldly transmitted her voice back. Don't think that just because your cultivation level is high, you can wrongly accuse others. When did I sow discord between you and Bai Changchun? What I said earlier has anything to do with Bai Changchun. Don't tell me you don't know who this little girl's master is? Im Baikong yelled as he clenched his teeth. Whether I know who her master is or not, it's none of your business. Don't tell me I have to report to you? Who gave you such a bad habit? Nongju scolded him with satisfaction. These two guys looked at each other and didn't say anything. But how could Lu Yanqing and Sikong-ju not see that the two of them were already quarreling with each other? Third brother Xian had never seen Bai Changchun before. But now that the topic of the late soul severing stage cultivator was actually related to Furong's jade pendant, he couldn't help but pay attention. The word Bai on the black jade pendant made his eyebrows twitch. This was obviously an ordinary jade pendant that indicated a surname. But the surname, Bai, seemed to be rare in the cultivation world. The attention of a late soul severing stage cultivator, and his master's attitude immediately made third brother Xian think of a certain person with the surname Bai. He remembered that this girl named Furong seemed to be Yu Qianzhou's woman. Chapter 617. Im Baikong's good mood these few days disappeared in an instant. Every time he met this guy, he would feel disgusted for a while, but he couldn't do anything to him. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he transmitted a message. Nongju, don't go overboard. Don't think that no one in this world is Bai Changchun's match. He had thought it through. If Nongju was persistent and attracted by Changchun's attention, he could only ask Niu Yid for help. He didn't believe that an immortal couldn't deal with Bai Changchun. Nongju was stunned. Was there anyone in this world who was Bai Changchun's match? The old fox wouldn't joke about this. She subconsciously asked, Who? There's always someone better. It's none of your business. Im Baikong transmitted. I'll arrange a house for you halfway up the mountain. You can't live there, right? He had already admitted defeat. After all, he didn't dare to provoke Bai Changchun. If he couldn't get Niu Yi to help, he would be in trouble. Of course I'll live there, Nongzhu replied. He didn't have any deep grudges with Im Baikong. He just didn't like the old fox, so he couldn't help but provoke him every time. In fact, Im Baikong never provoked him. Now that he heard that Niu Yi was staying on this heavily guarded mountain, he also wanted to stay there. It would be more convenient for him to chat with Yu Qianqiu. Now that he had fooled the other party and achieved his goal, he naturally had to stop while he was ahead. He couldn't risk his life against the old fox. The old fox wasn't someone to be trifled with. However, he was still pondering over the old fox's words. Was there really anyone in this world who was old Bai's match? Hearing this, Im Baikong's anger subsided a little. He turned to Sikongju and said, Lady Furong is new here. Make the arrangements. He didn't mention Nongzhu but Furong. It was obvious that he was giving Furong some face. After that, he floated into the Hall of Wealth to avoid any more awkwardness. Third brother Xian looked at Furong and confirmed his guess. She should be that person's disciple. Divine Dr. Liu, Mr. Nongzhu, Lady Furong, please follow me. Sikongju personally led them down. Not long after, Sikongju rushed over from the foot of the mountain and rushed into the Hall of Wealth. The slightly gloomy Im Baikong seemed to have eyes on the back of his head as he asked in a deep voice, Has everything been arranged? It's done. Sikongju cupped his hands and said, Master, Bing Chengzi brought Yan Juexing into the cornucopia. Im Baikong suddenly turned around. His eyes narrowed as he said with a mischievous smile, You still dare to come, you've got guts. Niu Yi's foresight is extraordinary. Last time we were fooled by Bing Chengzi. Yan Juexing. There must be something mysterious about this kid. Arrange for someone to keep an eye on him. Be careful not to alert the enemy. If you find him leaving the cornucopia alone, tell me immediately. I'll deal with him myself. Sikongju's eyes lit up. No wonder Master didn't pursue the matter from back then. It seems that this Yan Juexing is still a problem. If that's the case, then the matter from back then still had merit. He immediately replied, Don't worry, Master. There are many people in cornucopia now. No one will find out if 1 or 2 people are inserted to monitor Yan Juexing. I'll arrange it right away. There weren't many people in Bing Chengzi's group. They only brought Yan Juexing and Man Hu. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the 3 of them directly descended into the backyard of Di Rong Kingdom's shop. The manager of this place had already brought people to welcome them. Man Hu dismissed the people who came to welcome them, who knew that after a while, the manager returned and said that Hu Changshu's third son, Hu Yuntian, had come to pay a visit. Man Hu glanced at his master and immediately asked the manager to bring them in. When Hu Yuntian arrived, he couldn't avoid greeting and stated his purpose. It turned out that Hu Changshu had sent him over, saying that he had something to discuss with Bing Chengzi. Before Bing Chengzi left, he took a glance at Yan Juexing and left without saying anything. Actually, he didn't want to bring Yan Juexing this time, mainly because he was worried that something might happen. However, Yan Juexing insisted on coming. He said that if someone really wanted to deal with him, it would be more dangerous for him to separate from Bing Chengzi. Bing Chengzi thought about it and agreed. Plus, he couldn't force Yan Juexing to go, so he brought him along. However, he told Yan Juexing to try his best not to meet Niu Yi. No one knew the depth of Niu Yi, so he had to figure out Niu Yi's background first. There were only 3 people left in the backyard. Man Hu and Hu Yuntian were obviously very familiar with each other. The 2 of them were chatting politely. Brother Hu, this is my junior brother, Yan Juexing. Man Hu introduced. Yan Juexing nodded slightly. I guessed it. Hu Yuntian laughed and waved his hand. It's my first time meeting Brother Yan. I'll treat you to a fun place. Man Hu said. I wonder what kind of place it is for Brother Hu to find it fun. I wonder if the 2 of you have heard of the Sleeping Spring Inn? Hu Yuntian smiled. A trace of coldness flashed in Yan Juexing's eyes. Man Hu squinted his eyes. Those who were well informed would know that Niu Yi was currently living in the Sleeping Spring Inn. However, This guy insisted on bringing Yin Juexing to the Sleeping Spring Inn. It's just a brothel. What fun can there be? I'm not interested. Man who refused without batting an eyelid. However, Yin Juexing continued. Is it the Sleeping Spring Inn where Senior Yin and Senior Nyo wrote a poem together? That's right. It's because the two seniors wrote a poem together that this Sleeping Spring Inn has a special flavor. Hu Yuntian asked with a deep meaning, why? Is Brother Yin interested? He was here to probe under his father's orders. After Yin Baikong and Nyo Yud met, they actually did not pursue the matter of Yin Juexing. This had long made Hu Changsho suspicious, so he sent his son here to find a way to probe. In fact, Hu Changsho was not the only one who suspected this. I heard that Senior Nyo has a lover in the Sleeping Spring Inn called Yin Yu? Yin Juexing continued to ask. Haha, speaking of that Yin Yu, Senior Nyo's eyes are really good. Hu Yintian laughed. Eldest senior brother. Yin Juexing smiled at Man Hu and said, the Sleeping Spring Inn is famous in the world. Plus, it's hard to refuse Brother Hu's hospitality. Why don't we go and take a look? Man Hu was startled, but he knew that Yin Juexing was hard to persuade. There were some things that even his master could not persuade, so there was no point in persuading him. Thus, he did not say anything. Hu Yintian laughed and immediately waved his hand, making a gesture of invitation. The three of them left together. There were fresh flowers, delicious wine and delicacies, and beautiful women dancing and dancing. Even if the price was frighteningly high, there were still many cultivators who came to the Sleeping Spring Inn. It was said that cultivators should cultivate with a pure heart and few desires, and the cultivation world had always advocated this. But in reality, how many people could truly achieve a pure heart and few desires? Everyone had a pure heart and few desires, standing aloof from worldly affairs. What was the point of fighting and killing in the cultivation world? Wasn't it to have a longer life to enjoy? You also wanted to enjoy life unfettered, and others also wanted to enjoy life unfettered. Everyone wanted freedom. However, human nature dictated that when a person could truly enjoy freedom, he or she would definitely trample on the freedom of others. Walking on the road, it was possible to accidentally step on a rock. You could easily kick it away, but when there was a huge mountain blocking the road in front of you, could you easily kick it away? No matter how free one was, there would always be troublesome stones and mountains. The difference was that the degree of freedom and ability were always proportional. There would always be stumbling stones and mountains in front of them. Was your ability to kick away a stone or flatten a mountain? If you could do it, there would be an even higher mountain waiting for you in front of them. When you could do it, you might become a stone or a mountain in the eyes of others. They would also want to kick you away and get rid of you, because they also wanted to have greater freedom. Therefore, freedom was a very contradictory slogan. It was an idealistic phrase and very illusory. Only when one's ability was big or small could one distinguish the degree of freedom. No one had truly obtained unfettered freedom. Those who loudly shouted for freedom and unfettered should first ask themselves, why do you want freedom? Eat when you want to eat, drink when you want to drink, play when you want to play, and be happy when you want to be happy. Who would provide it? Who else would sacrifice their own freedom to provide for you to eat, drink, and be merry? It was still the same sentence. The size of your ability determined your degree of freedom. If you wanted to enjoy a high degree of freedom without relying on your ability, perhaps only your parents and relatives would be willing to sacrifice their freedom to do anything for you. But that was only for a while, not for a lifetime. Otherwise, how could there be such a good thing? If you wanted to trample on other people's freedom to fulfill yourself, sooner or later, you would become a stone or a mountain in the eyes of others. Hard cultivation with a clear mind and few desires was only a process to improve one's ability, not to destroy one's humanity. How many cultivators would be willing to cultivate to the point where they even lost their humanity? If they really reached the point where they had no feelings, what meaning would there be to cultivating? That would be no different from rotten wood. The minimum expenditure of 100,000 top-grade spirit stones per person in the Spring Slumber Tower was a sky-high price. But it was undoubtedly a threshold to test the ability of each cultivator. This place had a great reputation, but not everyone could come in and enjoy it. Freedom. Don't mention the past. Life is full of ups and downs, and memories can't be erased. Love and hate are still in the heart. A refreshing and touching zither tune suddenly sounded from the Spring Slumber Tower. Although the Spring Slumber Tower had a great reputation, people inevitably became tired after paying attention to it for a long time. There was no longer a crowd in front of the tower, and the cultivators on the street stopped for a short while at most. At this time, everyone's attention was focused on the cornucopia and treasure tower's limit-breaking pill. And the reservation had begun, however, when a faint sad zither tune floated out of the Spring Slumber Tower. It immediately froze the hurried footsteps on the street. They all turned around to listen to the sudden sound of nature, and their expressions were very surprised. Although they had never heard the zither tune and the voice before, they could only use the word beautiful to describe it. More and more people lingered in front of the Spring Slumber Tower. No wonder it's the Spring Slumber Tower that Senior Ian and Senior Nyo wrote together. I didn't expect it to have such a stunner and such a masterpiece. Yes, this woman's charm is even better than that owner Yen, TSK. Just the look in her eyes is enough to make people restless. What was most unexpected was that the Spring Slumber Tower actually got Yu Qianqiu's masterpiece. Although Yu Qianqiu is not a very good person, his zither music is undoubtedly the best in the world. Haven't you heard? Senior Nyo is more familiar with Yu Qianqiu's zither music. Maybe it was Senior Nyo who taught this song to the Spring Slumber Tower. It's very possible, but it's really a pity that the reservation for the limit-breaking pill had to be made at this time. And we were summoned by the door and had to leave midway. But then again, the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones were definitely well spent. Two cultivators who hurried out of the Spring Slumber Tower sighed endlessly, which made the onlookers in front of the tower itch. However, most of them were short of money, and not many could enter at any time. Chapter 618. Halfway down the God of Wealth Peak, among the lush greenery, flying beams and painted rafters were faintly discernible. Large and small houses blended together with the shade of greenery. Other than some of these houses for distinguished guests to rest, most of the houses were for the World Chamber of Commerce's high-ranking people to live in. After Nongju occupied a house, she looked around in a good mood. Compared to the surrounding houses, the house arranged by Sikongju was definitely considered outstanding among the nearby buildings. It was large and imposing enough, and should be the kind reserved for the most distinguished guests to live in. It seemed that she had benefited from Furong. Otherwise, it would be strange if the old fox didn't drive her down the mountain. Nongju glanced at the two girls who were also looking around and said happily, "There are many rooms here. Both of you go pick one you like to live in." The two girls looked at each other hesitantly. It seemed that there was nothing to be picky about where to live. Finally, Zi asked weakly, "Master, didn't you say that Yu Qianqiu would come to Cornucopia? Where is he?" Nongju was startled. She had only told by Changchun that Nyo Yud was Yu Qianqiu. She really didn't know if she should tell the two girls. She thought for a while and said, "You two stay here first. Yu Qianqiu hasn't arrived yet. When he arrives, he'll come find us immediately." After casually brushing off the two maidservants, he warned them not to run around and walked out of the courtyard by himself. Sikongju arranged a disciple to wait for orders outside. When he saw Nongju come out, he immediately bowed. "Take me to Nyo Yid's house to have a look," Nongju ordered without hesitation. The disciple immediately led the way in front. After shuttling through the intersecting steps under the shade for a while, the two of them walked towards a very imposing house. When they were not far from the gate, they saw three people walking up the steps in the opposite forest. Nongju was startled and thought to herself, why did she come here? A World Chamber of Commerce disciple led Lu Yanqing, and her disciple third Xian over. The three people opposite also paused, obviously not expecting Nongju to come here. The two groups of people met in front of the house's gate. Then both sides dismissed the World Commerce's disciples. "Nongju." Lu Yanqing nodded. Nongju looked around and said suspiciously, "Lu Yanqing, what are you doing here? Could it be that he's looking for Nyo Yid?" As he said this, he glanced towards the inside of the house. Lu Yanqing lightly explained, "I met Nyo Yid at the Ghost Manor. At that time, he said that Lao San brought Yu Qianqiu to meet him in Deyang City. When I went back to ask Lao San, he said that he didn't remember this. I came here today to let third brother and Nyoyid meet, and see if the third brother Xian, that Nyoyid mentioned is my disciple. Nongju was speechless and thought to herself that Yu Qianqiu must have lost his mind. Could Xian Laosan bring Yu Qianqiu to meet Nyoyid? Wasn't this lie a little too ridiculous? He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu was angry that Fang Ming used his name to pick up girls, so he casually lied. If Yu Qianqiu knew that the mysterious woman was Xian Laosan's master, Lu Yanqing, he wouldn't have said such a thing even if he was beaten to death. Hee, there's such a thing. Nongju laughed. Little did he know that the eyes behind the gauze hat were carefully observing the changes in his expression. Perhaps Amano, Li Qiuxiang, and Highway heard the commotion outside, so they walked out. As for Mo Xiaojun, he was sent by Yu Qianqiu to Treasure Tower to inquire about the market. Li Qiuxiang had never seen Lu Yanqing, but Tian Yi and Highway looked at each other. Wasn't this woman wearing gauze hat the mysterious woman that appeared in the ghost manor that day? How could she appear here? Nongju and the other two stared at the horrifying and ugly Li Qiuxiang. They must have heard about this woman's horrifying actions in the treasure bowl. May I know who you are looking for? Tian Yi cupped his fist and asked. In fact, he had already guessed that the three people were looking for Nyoyid. It was impossible for them to be here. Xian Laosan glanced at their cultivation and answered, I'm Xian Laosan from Lingfang Valley. Then he pointed to Lu Yanqing and Nongju respectively and explained, This is my master, the master of Lingfang Valley. And this is Mr. Nongju, the master of Purple Bamboo Forest in the South Sea. We're here to visit Senior Nyoyid. Tian Yi and the other two were shocked. They didn't expect that the two famous masters of spirit severing stage had arrived. They immediately bowed and said, Greetings, seniors. Don't be so polite. Nongju waved his hand and said, Where's Nyoyid? Is he here? Senior Nyo is not here. Tian Yi said respectfully, Where is he? Nongju frowned and said, Do you know where he is? It's not our place to ask about Senior Nyo's whereabouts. We don't know where he is either. He should be at the foot of the mountain. Tian Yi replied. They were not well informed. Those who were well informed naturally knew that Nyoyid was either at the God of Wealth Peak or at the Spring Slumber Tower. But he couldn't say it out loud. When Nyoyid was not here, Nongju and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and didn't say much. They turned around and left. Tian Yi and the other two saw them off. Nongju and Lu Yanqing walked shoulder to shoulder on the steps of the mountain. Xian Laosan followed them from afar. Nongju was still trying to figure out where Yu Qianqiu had gone. Suddenly, she heard the beauty beside her ask, Nongju, I heard that you know Yu Qianqiu and Nyoyid? Oh. Nongju was slightly stunned. Then she immediately laughed and said, I like to make friends. Nongju, tell me honestly, is Lady Furong Bai Changchun's disciple? Lu Yanqing asked. Haha. Beauty Lu, there is no need to ask so clearly. Nongju paused and said, Anyway, what you see is the truth. Lu Yanqing nodded slightly and said, I just find it a little strange. Bai Changchun has never been defeated in his life. He is extremely arrogant. When his cultivation reached the early stage of deity transformation, he was already invincible. Now his cultivation is so terrifying that no one knows how deep it is. Being invincible must be lonely. So he fades out of the world and quietly stands in the demon region. He looks down on the world because there is no one in the world who is worthy of his attention. He is an insurmountable monument, an immortal legend. Ordinary people and things can't enter his eyes. And from what I see, although Lady Furong has extraordinary talent, she is not a genius. Plus, the opening of the East Holy Land is not far away. Why would he accept a female disciple at this time? And he even gave her the jade pendant that he always carries with him. It is really unimaginable. You can be his confidant now. Nongju laughed and said, That old guy always has a cold face. Who knows what he is thinking? Don't you know? Lu Yanqing asked in a strange tone. Look at what you are saying. I am not a roundworm in his stomach. I really don't know. Nongju denied on the spot. Even in front of the world's most beautiful woman, she could still lie without batting an eyelid. She was indeed a veteran among flowers. Nongzhu. Lu Yanqing suddenly stopped and asked in a voice transmission. But as far as I know, Furong is Yu Qianqiu's woman. Bai Changchun would not accept someone else's woman as his disciple. Also, after when Lanfeng returned from the demon region in defeat, he suddenly announced that he would support Yu Qianqiu. This is not Wen Lanfeng's character at all. Also, Zi seemed to have been with Yu Qianqiu when they were in the Chinese cultivation world. What was going on? Don't tell me that Yu Qianqiu has nothing to do with Bai Changchun. Nongzhu also stopped and said in a surprised voice, Lu Yanqing, what do you want to say? Why can't I understand what you mean? You don't think that Yu Qianqiu has something to do with Bai Changchun, do you? What do you think? Lu Yanqing said indifferently. With Furong's condition, Bai Changchun will not like her. If you ask me, it is Yu Qianqiu who is difficult to see through. Bai Changchun is more likely to like him. Do you think that Bai Changchun loves me because of my dog? Nonsense, your imagination is really rich. Nongzhu shrugged disapprovingly. Seeing that he still did not admit it, Lu Yanqing did not bother to explain, and continued to walk along the steps of the mountainside. You think what you want, I just won't admit it. Nongzhu secretly laughed. After a few steps, she suddenly heard Lu Yanqing's voice. Maybe others don't know, but I know that Yu Qianqiu is Niu Yid. Nongzhu couldn't find it funny anymore. She stood still and stared at the graceful figure walking up the stairs with her eyes and mouth wide open. After a long time, he cursed under his breath and quickly followed after them. The two of them stood in a pavilion on the mountainside without saying a word. Third brother Xian was very conscious and did not follow them. This pavilion was built in a relatively prominent position and could enjoy most of the scenery of the cornucopia. They stood in silence for a while. Nongzhu sighed softly and said, Humans. There is no need to say it out loud. It is so boring. I just want to confirm it. If I really want to say it, you and I will not stand here. Lu Yanqing said lightly. Hey, what's going on? Nongzhu looked down the mountain and felt strange. Lu Yanqing glanced at the crowded place and said, Don't you know? That is the position of the treasure tower. They all want to reserve the limit-breaking pill made by Niu Yid. Sai. Niu Yid's elixir and Im Baikong's tricks. What are they trying to do? I mean that position. Nongzhu pointed to another place where many people were lingering. This time, Lu Yanqing said sarcastically, That is the spring slumber building where Niu Yid and Im Baikong work together to write a poem. These two are really good partners. They work together to write poems and sell pills. Nongzhu laughed and thought to herself, This Yu Qianqiu is really not a good person. But I think he is going to make a fortune this time. I don't know if Wen Lanfeng went to join in the fun. Why don't we go to the Wen family's shop and have a look? Nongzhu changed the topic and said, Is it convenient for you to go? Why would it be inconvenient for me? You are just thinking too much. I came here to see him. Lu Yanqing turned to third brother Xian and said, You go back first. You don't need to follow me. Then she took the lead and flew towards the direction of the Wen family's shop. Nongzhu winked and chuckled, then flew into the air and followed coincidentally. The Wen family's shop was diagonally opposite the sleeping spring tower. The two landed in the backyard of the Wen family's shop. Immediately a guard shouted, Who are you? How dare you trespass here? Obviously he did not know them. What are you shouting for? Nongzhu said disdainfully, when Lanfeng's voice came from the upper floor of the shop. Is it Nongzhu? Come straight up. Chapter 619. Mr. Nongzhu? The man was shocked on the spot. Everyone in the Wen family knew that Nongzhu was Wen Lanfeng's best friend. So he bowed and apologized. Nongzhu would not argue with him. She waved her hand casually and went upstairs in the shop. The top floor was empty and clean. The diamond-shaped wooden lattice window was half open, and a guqin was placed beside the window. Wen Lanfeng stood by the desk with his eyes closed and hands behind his back. He seemed to be listening to something. Nongzhu rushed over and was very curious when she saw this scene. Who else did you bring? When Lanfeng asked with his eyes closed, he could tell that someone was going upstairs. Nongzhu walked to him and said with a smile, You'll know when you look back. When Lanfeng slowly opened his eyes and looked over, he was stunned, and the expression on his face became complicated. He turned around and said with a wry smile, "Why are you here?" "I heard that you came to Cornucopia, so I came to have a look," Lu Yanqing said. Haha. Nongzhu looked at the guqin on the desk and was overjoyed. Lu Yanqing looked at the guqin and was speechless. When Lanfeng's old face suddenly became angry, he stared at Nongzhu and shouted, "What are you laughing at?" Anyone who knew something about the past between Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing knew that Wen Lanfeng really tried his best to pursue Lu Yanqing. Knowing that Lu Yanqing liked music, he immediately studied hard and practiced hard, turning from an ignorant person to a person of this path. The reason why Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng could become friends was that Wen Lanfeng admired Nongzhu's good flute, so he came to the South Sea purple bamboo forest for advice. Nothing. Nongzhu waved her hand and asked curiously, "Are you practicing the guqin here?" Wen Lanfeng gritted his teeth, but Lu Yanqing was there. He still wanted to maintain his demeanor, so it was not convenient to argue with Nongzhu. He calmed down a little, walked to the window, pointed to the direction of the spring slumber house diagonally opposite, and said, "Listen carefully to the song coming from there." Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing both walked over. At first, they only heard the noise of the street. Then they held their breath and immediately distinguished the lingering and sad tune mixed in the noise. Upon hearing this, the two of them were immediately engrossed in it. The three of them stood quietly in front of the window, savoring the faint sadness in the song. After a long time, Lu Yanqing let out a sigh of relief and murmured, "Don't mention the past anymore. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if the memories can't be erased, love and hate are still in my heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, don't bother asking for my news anymore." Wen Lanfeng, who was silently looking at her, murmured, "Love is a difficult problem. It dazzles people. Perhaps it is possible to forget the pain, but it is not easy to forget you. You never really left me. You will always be in my heart. I still love you. I can't do anything about myself," Nongzhu answered with a sense of loss, "because I still have a dream, and you are still in my heart. I am always easily moved by the past, and my heart always aches for you. Don't linger on my unintentional tenderness in the years. Don't ask me if we'll meet again. Don't care if my words are insincere." What a sad song. Lu Yanqing shook her head and sighed. She continued the lyrics that Nongzhu had not finished reading. "Why don't you understand? As long as there is love, there will be pain. One day you will know that life will not be different without me. Life is too rushed. I am so afraid that my eyes are always hazy with tears. Forget me and there will be no pain. Leave the past in the wind." The three of them stood in front of the window, each thinking. Lu Yanqing, who was the first to wake up, stared at the direction of the song outside the window and asked, "Isn't that the Sleeping Spring building? Is it the girl in the brothel who is playing and singing?" She was quite curious. Was there such a talented girl in the brothel? "I sent someone to check. It is indeed a girl in the brothel." When Lanfeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "But this song was composed by Yu Qianqiu. According to the girl in the brothel, it was Yu Qianqiu who wrote it for her." "Is it Yu Qianqiu again?" Lu Yanqing nodded slightly and said, "No wonder. It is estimated that only Yu Qianqiu can make such a wonderful song. It seems that Yu Qianqiu has also been trapped by love. If he did not empathize, how could he make such an unforgettable song?" "Yu Qianqiu, did he make it? Is it true? Do you believe it?" Nongzhu's face was full of disbelief. To be honest, he had long heard of such a thing, but he had never believed it. Based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu, what overflowing talent. That was simply nonsense. Yu Qianqiu probably plagiarized it from somewhere. But so far, it seemed that everyone recognized Yu Qianqiu's talent. Now even when Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing thought so. What the hell? You don't think it was Yu Qianqiu? When Lanfeng asked curiously, he believed that Nongzhu knew more about Yu Qianqiu than he did. Lu Yanqing also stared through the gauze curtain with burning eyes. "I'm not sure." Nongzhu smiled and immediately changed the topic. "When Lanfeng, why are you here? Do you want to buy some limit-breaking pills? Or?" He looked at Lu Yanqing. Although he did not finish his words, his meaning was obvious. When Lanfeng was slightly annoyed. "I didn't know Yanqing would come. I just wanted to see who Niu Yit is." Lu Yanqing was a little surprised. Didn't he know that Niu Yid was Yu Qianqiu? Oh, did you see it? Nongzhu laughed. When Lanfeng stared out of the window at the spring slumber house diagonally opposite, he snorted and said, I have no interest in seeing him now. How powerful can a person who hangs out in a brothel every day be? What is he doing in a brothel? Nongzhu was surprised. What else can he do? Everyone knows about this. Don't you know? When Lanfeng snorted and said, Niu Yid now lives in the spring slumber house. It is said that the madam of the spring slumber house has become his exclusive woman. Many people have seen the two of them fooling around every day. Nongzhu's face instantly darkened. Before he came here, he heard that Niu Yid and Yin Baikong joined hands to write poems in the brothel. He did not think it was a big deal. As for what happened after that, he had been rushing with the two girls, so he really did not know. I came here with Zi and Furong from thousands of miles away, but he is hiding in a brothel and fooling around. Nongzhu sneered with a gloomy face and said, he is really a shameless guy. Lu Yanqing's eyebrows under the gauze hat were tightly knitted together. Is there any misunderstanding? I have seen him in the ghost village. He is poetic and has seen through the world. He doesn't look like the kind of person who messes around. I think it's better to clarify the matter before making a conclusion. Hearing this, Nongzhu's face finally looked a little better. Unexpectedly, when Lanfeng was stunned and said, poetic and heroic? Sleeping in spring without knowing the dawn, birds chirping everywhere, wind and rain at night. Who knows how many flowers have fallen? Yanqing, do you think a person who can write such a lewd poem for a brothel is poetic and heroic? Lu Yanqing's face turned red when she heard this. Fortunately, the gauze hat blocked the change of expression on her face. Then she fell silent and did not say anything. Nongzhu's face that had just calmed down turned black again. She snorted and said, I was wondering why I couldn't find him. It turns out that he is hiding in a brothel. I have to pay him a visit. In the backyard of the spring slumber house, Yu Qianqiu moved a chair and sat by the small lotus pond. Listening to the song of the Enchantress of 100 Charms in the front hall, he felt a toothache. No matter how he sat, it was not comfortable. From the first time she sang, he guessed that she was looking for him. Later, he got confirmation from Yinyu that she was really looking for Yu Qianqiu. Mo Xiaojun hurriedly turned from the back door of the front hall and approached to salute. Sir, how are the reservations for the limit-breaking pills? Yu Qianqiu turned his head and asked. He originally wanted to go to the treasure house to check it himself. However, his current status was very high. Wherever he went, he would cause a commotion. It was really not convenient for him to go to a crowded place. The World Chamber of Commerce first took out 10 limit-breaking pills for everyone to test on the spot. When the reservations were officially started, 5,000 limit-breaking pills were sold out in less than a quarter of an hour. Dirong Nation's Ice Palace and East Righteous Nation's Cloud Palace had the most reservations. They each got 100 pills. The other 300 or so factions divided the remaining 4,000 or so. It wasn't too much, but they didn't get much. As for the others, they didn't even get a chance to order before they were all snatched up by the major forces. Mo Xiaojun said. Earlier in the treasure tower, he had been very arrogant. While everyone else was squeezing around in the hall, because Niu Yid had informed the World Chamber of Commerce in advance, he had entered through the back door and wandered around the counter selling items. Without Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshou's support, Yin Baikong wouldn't have the confidence to make a fortune. It's reasonable to give them some benefits, Yu Qianqiu said as he stretched out his hand. Mo Xiaojun immediately handed him a jade archive. The treasure house was the largest trading place in the treasure bowl. Many of the buyers and sellers didn't want to show their faces in public, so they used the treasure house to publicize their transactions. Regardless of whether they were buying or selling an item, the price would be clearly marked at the treasure house, and a sign would be hung. Of course, the treasure house wouldn't work for nothing. They would take 10% of the transaction as commission. The Jade Archive Mo Xiaojun gave him recorded the day's listed transaction information. Yu Qianqiu requested that he send over the updated listing information every day. 7-star blood orchid? Yu Qianqiu muttered as he injected his consciousness into the archive. He skimmed through the Jade archive and was suddenly attracted by the familiar words. He discovered that someone was buying the 7-star blood orchid in large quantities. The price was 20 million high-grade spirit stones per plant. It was slightly cheaper than the auction price in the huaxia cultivation world, but not by much. Buying in large quantities? Yu Qianqiu frowned. He was very familiar with the 7-star blood orchid. There were quite a few of them in Utopia. As far as he knew, the blood fruit of the 7-star blood orchid was a good item that could help a cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage. In other words, it could help a core formation cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage. But now, the 7 treasures pill was being sold cheaply. Each pill was only 2 million high-grade spirit stones. Who would actually spend 10 times the price to buy the 7-star blood orchid? Could it be that someone had a large number of Adumbra flowers and wanted to buy a large number of blood orchids to refine the 7 orifices exquisite pill? That didn't seem possible, did it? Yu Qianqiu's gaze was uncertain. Could it be that the 7-star blood orchid had some other miraculous effects that he didn't know about? Chapter 620. After mulling over it for a long time, he became suspicious of this matter, so he made a mental note of it. After injecting his divine sense into the Jade archive, he went through all the information in it. He realized that there were quite a lot of items that had been purchased. They were densely packed and dazzling. Furthermore, most of these items that could be traded in the treasure tower were extremely valuable. Each item was worth more than 10 million high-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu sighed to himself. With so many items, even if he could sell half of them, the world commerce would still make a fortune just by taking a 10% commission. As he was sighing, a figure landed in the courtyard. Mo Xiaojun, who was standing beside him, bowed and greeted, Senior Xikong. Xikong Ju smiled and nodded. He cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu and greeted, Senior Niu. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him, then waved Mo Xiaojun away before standing up and asking, "What is it?" "My master invites Senior up to the summit for a chat." Xikong Ju smiled. His attitude was extremely respectful. The explosive orders for the limit-breaking pills made everyone in the world commerce feel invigorated. Oh my! Before the items were even sold, they had already received a deposit of 5 billion. It would be strange if they weren't excited. Everyone believed that after this auction, there would be plenty of rewards for everyone. Yu Qianqiu smiled. He guessed that after Yin Baikong received the deposit, he would rush to deliver the money to him and urge for the goods. Without further ado, he threw out his flying sword and flew towards the god of wealth peak. Xikong Ju looked around and couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was the first time in his life that he came to a brothel so diligently. It couldn't be helped. Who asked this great god to like this place? At the summit of the god of wealth peak, Yin Baikong smiled widely and cupped his fists in greeting. Yu Qianqiu landed on the ground and sheathed his sword. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Brother Yin. I'm sure you've earned quite a lot this time." "Sigh. Brother Niu is too kind. In the end, it's all thanks to you." Yin Baikong took out 6 bulging storage pouches, as if he was performing a magic trick, and handed them over. "Here are 6 billion. Please purchase another 5,000 limit-breaking pills. I'll have to trouble Brother Niu to make another trip to the upper realm." Yu Qianqiu did not stand on ceremony. He took the storage bag and put it away. Previously, when the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce announced the price of the limit-breaking pill at 2 million per pill, Yin Baikong was probably afraid that Niu Yud would be unhappy to see him earn too much, so he invited him over to placate him. Then he solemnly vowed, "After estimating the financial resources of the various forces, we set the price of the limit-breaking pill at 2 million per pill. Of course, Yin Baikong will not let Brother Niu suffer a loss. The remaining 1 billion from last time will be Brother Niu's. You don't have to return it." The price of the limit-breaking pill also rose from 5 billion for every 5,000 pills to 6 billion. "Brother Niu, what do you think?" This was the first time in Yin Baikong's entire life that he was a buyer who took the initiative to raise the price. The purpose of doing this was naturally to prevent Neo Yid from feeling indignant and refusing to cooperate with him. Actually, his worries were unnecessary. Even if he did not increase the price, Yu Qianqiu would not go back on his words. Of course, if he increased the price, Yu Qianqiu would not object. The last time I went back, I had already pre-ordered a lot of goods. If I have enough money, I believe I can bring back a lot in one go. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Brother Yin, why don't you buy a lot in one go? It will save me a lot of trips. Brother Neo might not know, but the number of people participating in this year's auction far exceeds the previous years. The flow of spirit stones is too large, so it is impossible to transfer too many idle spirit stones at once. We can only rely on the money from the sale of the limit-breaking pill. I hope Brother Neo can understand. Yin Baikong tactfully refused. When doing business, one must have the courage to take risks, but there was no need to take risks now. Since he could safely earn money, why should he take such a big risk? He was not crazy. Who knew what the situation in the immortal world was like? If something unexpected happened, he could minimize the loss to the greatest extent. I understand. Yu Qianqiu nodded with a double meaning and said with a smile, I will go now. Wait a moment. Yin Baikong waved his hand and asked, I wonder when Brother Neo will return. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, Last time, I have already pre-ordered a lot. This time, I can just go and get the goods directly. I should be back in half a day. Very good. Yin Baikong clapped his hands and praised, but his smile suddenly disappeared. He frowned and asked, Brother Neo, the cornucopia has already begun. Why is that Yu Qianqiu not here yet? I am still waiting for his 7 treasure pills. According to the estimated distance, he should arrive in 2 days. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and said with a smile, Don't worry. If he doesn't keep his promise, then he can't blame me for standing him up. At that time, I will directly purchase the 7 treasure pills and sell them to you. Haha, that would be for the best. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles, but he heard Neo Yid say, I will be back as soon as possible. Neo Yid suddenly disappeared in front of him. Yin Baikong was startled and quickly scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. There were no abnormal fluctuations in the surrounding airflow. Neo Yid had disappeared just like that. Yin Baikong couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. Neo Yid's departure this time was even more bizarre than the last time. In the backyard of the sleeping spring loft, Yin Yu prepared a plate of washed and opened melons and fruits. The arrangement was very exquisite, and she personally brought it over with a smile. However, she found that there was no one sitting on the chair beside the lotus pond, and there was no one around either. Walking into the bungalow, she found that it was also empty. So mysterious, where did he run off to this time? Yin Yu complained and placed the fruit plate on the table inside the house. After a moment of daze, she turned around and walked out the door, but suddenly found that there were 3 more people in the yard, 2 men and 1 woman. The woman was dressed in a green robe and had a slim and outstanding figure. Her face was covered by a green veil and a bamboo hat, so her appearance could not be seen clearly, but her temperament was extraordinary. The 2 men were also outstanding, and one of them was so handsome that no one dared to look directly at him. Even Yin Yu, who had seen many things, felt her heart palpitate. She admitted that she had never seen a man with such outstanding appearance. The 2 men and 1 woman coldly looked at her. The 3 of them were Nongzhu, Wen Lanfeng, and Lu Yanqing. Yin Yu felt a little strange. Neo Yid lived here, but there were still people who dared to trespass? She turned around and found that the cultivation of the 3 people was not something she could see through. However, the 3 of them had the temperament of being above others, so she did not dare to look down on them. She respectfully said, May I know what the 3 of you are here for? Look at your appearance, you look like a prostitute. Nongzhu's face was full of disdain, and she coldly snorted, Are you that Yin Yu? The other party ridiculed her as soon as they arrived, and Yin Yu bit her lip. She did not dare to offend them without knowing their background. Forcing a smile, she said, Yes, I am Yin Yu. Are you looking for me? Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of us looking for you? Nongzhu spoke rudely again. and the expression on his face was even more disgusted. Nongju, be careful when you speak. I did not offend you. Lu Yanqing could not bear to listen anymore, and immediately warned him. Then she softly said to Yan Yu, Master Yan, please tell Niu Yid that Lu Yanqing, Wen Lanfeng, and Nongju are here to visit. Ah! Yan Yu could not help but exclaim, and the grievance in her heart suddenly turned into anxiety. She glanced at Lu Yanqing, and then fell on the bamboo flute on Nongju's waist. The last one was a tall man in a gray robe. Needless to say, he should be the second master in the world, Wen Lanfeng. She immediately bowed in fear and trepidation and said, Yan Yu greets the 3 seniors. Don't be so polite. Lu Yanqing glanced around. If Niu Yid was here, it was impossible that he did not hear this. She could not help but ask, Is Niu Yid not here? Yan Yu replied, Senior, this junior also does not know where he went. 2 of the 4 great men had come, and the world-famous Mr. Nongju was not very polite to her. She was under a lot of pressure. Yan Juexing, Man Hu, and Hu Yintian walked out of the crowd in front of the Sleeping Spring building. The first 2 looked at the poem on the wall, and looked at each other. Hu Yintian listened to the zither music drifting from inside, and was startled. He said, Why is there such a beautiful song today? Wasn't there before? Yan Juexing asked. It wasn't when I came yesterday. Hu Yintian shook his head, and then waved his hand and said, Come, let's go in and have a look. As soon as the 3 of them stepped into the building, they were immediately surrounded by a few women. Yan Juexing was not interested in these women, and did not even bother to look at them. He looked around the layout of the building. The first floor was the lobby to welcome guests, and there was nothing worth seeing. The turtle slave led the 3 of them to the second floor, where the zither music and singing were drifting from, and immediately saw a hall full of guests. Yesterday, we were all hiding in our rooms to listen to the birds. Why are there so many people sitting in the hall today? Hu Yintian laughed and said. When his gaze fell on the amorous woman in the middle of the hall, he suddenly could not laugh anymore, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The central hall on the second floor was usually used for singing, dancing, and music performances. At this moment, there was a half-meter-high round table in the middle of the hall, and on it was a red velvet carpet. A charming woman wrapped in red gauze sat on the top of the table, playing the zither and singing softly. The red gauze could not cover the 2 exposed snow-white and round thighs, and with the red velvet carpet, her snow-white skin was even more conspicuous. The visual difference in color made people's blood boil. The woman's watery and seductive eyes wandered from time to time. It could be said that she was overflowing with charm, and the group of guests almost drooled. The turtle slave who led the 3 of them up found an empty seat in the middle of the hall, and raised his hand to guide the 3 of them. 3 honored guests, please follow me. Who would have thought that Hu Yintian would grab his lapel? His eyes would not let go of the charming woman, but his mouth would ask the turtle slave, What a flirtatious beauty! Why didn't I see her yesterday? What is her name? The turtle slave did not dare to offend the guests, and could only awkwardly smile. She came to the Sleeping Spring building yesterday, and only went on stage today to perform. Her name is Yi Kun. Yi Kun. Hu Yintian laughed mischievously, and his hand that was grabbing the lapel loosened. The 3 of them followed the turtle slave to a table near the periphery. When Hu Yintian saw that it was too far from the center, he immediately became unhappy, and said in a deep voice, I want a seat near the front, quickly arrange it. Chapter 621. Yan Juexing and Man Hu glanced at each other. It seemed that this Hu Yintian relied on his father's support to do similar things. He did it quite quickly. The tortoise slave was speechless. The Cloud Palace's 3rd young master was not someone he could provoke, but the front seats were already full. He couldn't just drive them away. What's more, those who could come here to throw money, which one of them did not have a bit of background? Who could he provoke? He immediately said with a sullen face, Senior Hu, the front seats are full. Hu Yintian's face sank. He was used to being domineering. The number of people who dared to provoke him could be counted on one hand. Now a little tortoise slave dared not give him face. He stared coldly at the tortoise slave, and his body faintly emitted a murderous aura. The people in the hall suddenly felt the murderous aura. They all suddenly woke up and turned their heads to look. Those who could spend 100,000 high-grade spirit stones to sit here and play had some knowledge. They recognized who it was at a glance. Hu Changsho's son was making trouble, but no one present dared to say anything. But the Enchantress of 100 Charm was still calmly playing the zither and singing. Brother Hu. Man Hu said from the side. He can't make the decision. Why do you make things difficult for him? He glanced around and said, this is Cornucopia's territory. Even if you don't give Senior Neo face, it's not good to make Senior In lose face. Hu Yintian glanced at him and restrained his murderous aura. He snorted coldly and sat down in an empty seat. Man Hu and Yin Juexing also sat down. The tortoise slave repeatedly thanked and quickly left. After a while he brought 3 girls to accompany the guests. The food and wine on the table were all served. Although the 3 girls flattered, the 3 guests did not seem to have much interest in them. Their eyes were focused on the Enchantress of 100 Charm, who was playing the zither and singing in the center of the hall. In fact, it was not only this table. The girls accompanying the guests at the other tables were also treated coldly. The Enchantress of 100 Charm undoubtedly became the top courtesan at the scene, stealing the limelight of the girls from the spring slumber brothel. Even Man Hu, who was not very interested in women, could not help but secretly praise this woman's charm. Her temptation to men was too great. He turned his head to look at Yin Juexing, only to find that his eyes were flickering as he stared at the singer, as if he was thinking about something. He couldn't help but secretly transmit his voice. What's wrong? Yin Juexing replied, I've seen this woman before in the 100 Flowers Valley. She's the former palace master of the Enchantment Palace. Her name is 100 Charm Enchantress. Yikun seems to be her real name. Barbarian Tiger was flabbergasted. The current sect master of Pink Sect. Why would she show her face here? Is she tired of living? I don't know. I don't think many people here know her. Yin Juexing squinted his eyes and said, but there are rumors that she is Yu Qinsho's mistress. Man Hu slightly nodded his head. He glanced at Hu Yuntian and continued to transmit his voice. I'm afraid this guy doesn't have any good intentions in bringing us here. His previous actions might have been intentional. Although I managed to persuade him, he might take the opportunity to cause trouble later. Yin Juexing asked with some confusion. Isn't he afraid of breaking the rules of Cornucopia by making trouble here? Besides, this place is related to Niu Yid. Would he dare to offend Niu Yid? Rules are set by people. They can restrain most people. But Yin Baikong's rules can't restrain people like us. Man Hu said worriedly. I suspect that he's making trouble to lure Niu Yid out and let you meet him. I'm afraid there's a backup plan. Hu Changsho invited Master, and he invited us here. I'm afraid the father and son have already discussed how to deal with it. We have to be careful. Yin Juexing nodded his head slightly. He glanced at Hu Yuntian coldly, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. When the song Laughing at the World of Mortals ended, there was a continuous burst of cheers in the hall. The Enchantress of 100 Charms slowly stood up, bowed to the audience, and said with an enchanting smile, Thank you, everyone, for coming to support me. Let's call it a day. I'll sing for everyone tomorrow. After saying that, she walked down the stage, intending to leave. Not to mention her seductive posture, her hot and seductive figure was even more eye-catching. The crowd booed. Hu Yintian stood up and shouted, Wait! His figure flashed and blocked in front of 100 Charm Enchantress. His eyes unscrupulously swept up and down her body. He laughed and said, It's a waste to use such beauty to sing. It's better to come with me. He raised his hand and grabbed her arm. 100 Charm Enchantress's body seemed to inadvertently move slightly to the side, causing Hu Yuntian's hand to grab empty air. She giggled and said, Even if I don't sing, I can't sell my body. The spectators sitting in a circle all shook their heads and thought it was a pity. Since this woman was fancied by Hu Yuntian, it would be difficult for her to get away. I'm not asking you to sell your body. I'm just asking you to come with me. Hu Yuntian reached out to touch her face. 100 Charm Enchantress giggled and avoided it. she asked. Why should I go with you? Hu Yuntian laughed and said, as long as you come with me, I can guarantee that you'll never be able to enjoy yourself for the rest of your life. You won't have to sing anymore. That won't do. I don't want to be someone's mistress. I prefer to earn my own living. 100 Charm Enchantress took 2 steps back and slightly bowed. She didn't want to argue with him anymore. Her figure flashed, and she appeared outside the circle, walking toward a long corridor. That's not up to you. Hu Yuntian's face darkened. He teleported again and stopped her. He sneered and said, today you'll have to go with me whether you want to or not. I advise you to be sensible. Don't make me use force on a delicate beauty like you. Could it be that honored guest doesn't know that this is Master Yan's Spring Slumber Tower? 100 Charm Enchantress reminded him with a smile. It's because I'm giving Master Yin face that I'm being polite to you. Otherwise, why would I be so long-winded with you? Hu Yuntian said in a deep voice. I'll give you one last chance. Just obediently come with me. Don't force me to make a move. Honored guest, you're making things difficult for me. I only sell my skills, not my body. Goodbye. 100 Charm Enchantress wore a faint smile on her face and walked past him. You still want to leave now? Hu Yuntian coldly snorted. He quickly grabbed the other party's half-naked shoulder with one hand. In the end, he found that he grabbed nothing. The person in front of him was actually an illusion. The person in front of him was already several meters away. They started to make a move. The group of people clicked their tongues. They thought that there was going to be a good show to watch. They didn't know if the person behind the Spring Slumber Tower would appear. Yan Juexing and Man Hu looked at each other and revealed an expression, as if they had expected it. This guy really wanted to cause trouble. Hu Yuntian made a sound of surprise. His cultivation level was obviously higher than the other parties. He didn't expect that he would fail. He teleported again and stretched out his hand to grab. In the end, he found that he still grabbed nothing. It was still an illusion. This time he was a little angry. His figure flashed again and again as he chased after the other party's figures. Pung-pung sounds continued. Holes appeared on both sides of the wall. In the end, he found that the other party's figures were getting more and more. The illusions almost filled half the corridor. It was hard to tell which one was real and which one was fake. The onlookers were in an uproar. They didn't expect that a girl who sang in the Spring Slumber Tower would have such a brilliant body technique. In the backyard of the Spring Slumber Tower, Lu Yanqing and Yin Yu were chatting. The two girls would laugh from time to time when Lanfeng stood aside and seemed to be eavesdropping on the conversation between the two girls. From time to time, a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that he enjoyed this feeling. Nongzhu, on the other hand, was wandering around the yard with her hands behind her back. Her expression was not very good. The sudden sound of fighting in the Spring Slumber Tower startled the 4 of them. They all looked back at the same time. At this moment, a pimp quickly ran in. He glanced at the other 3, and then hurriedly reported to Yinyu. Boss, Hu Yuntian from the Cloud Palace has taken a fancy to Miss Yi-kun. He wants to take her away. However, Miss Yi insisted on selling her skills, and not her body. As a result, she angered Hu Yuntian. The 2 of them have already started fighting. Boss, go and have a look. Hu Changsho's son is really becoming more and more promising. He actually came to the brothel to steal someone. Nongzhu sneered. Yi-kun? Lu Yanqing turned around and asked Yinyu. Is she the one who sings in the Spring Slumber Tower? Yes. Yinyu bowed to them and said, Seniors, please wait a moment. I'll go and have a look. I'll go with you, Lu Yanqing said. She already had a good impression of Yi-kun when she heard that she insisted on selling her skills, and not her body. In addition, she was good at playing the zither. She wanted to get to know her. Yinyu was happy to hear that. With Lu Yanqing accompanying her, there was really no need to be afraid of the people from the Cloud Palace. Let me go. When Lanfeng said, he frowned and said, that kind of place is not suitable for you. I'll go and have a look. Although he did not want to go to a place like the Spring Slumber Tower, he was even more unwilling to let Lu Yanqing go. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in place. Hu Yuntian tried to catch her, but he found that he could not catch her. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he became angry out of shame. It was true that he liked women, but he was not the kind of person who was blinded by lust. The reason why he did this, as man who expected, was to lure Niu Yid out to see Yin Juexing. With his identity, a woman was a small matter, but losing the face of the Cloud Palace was a big matter. For a moment, he actually had a murderous intent, and was ready to destroy the flower. Hey, did you notice that this woman's movement technique is a bit like the South Sea purple bamboo forest's Mr. Nongju's great art of transposition? Someone curiously said. Man who slightly shook his head. He had seen Ziyi's great art of transposition at the sword drawing conference. Although it was a bit similar to this woman's, this movement technique was much worse than the great art of transposition. Yin Juexing said. This should be the phantom great art of the former Phantom Palace. When Man Who nodded in agreement, he suddenly said, Hu Yintian is going to kill. Beauty of 100 Charm naturally felt it. She suddenly panicked a little. With the opponent's ability, once he started to fight with her, she was afraid that this little movement technique would not be able to stop him. Now she was a little regretful. She did not expect that with Niu Yid's support in the Sleeping Spring building, there was still someone who dared to use force. If she had known this earlier, she would not have shown up. Just when she was thinking about where to escape, there was a sudden uproar in the lobby, and then it became abnormally quiet. Someone indifferently said, Hu Changsho's son is really more and more promising. He actually came to the brothel to kidnap a woman. When Lanfeng's long hair was draped over his shoulders, he stood with his hands behind his back. No one knew when he appeared in front of the entrance of the long corridor. He directly borrowed Nongju's words. Chapter 622. Temptress was overjoyed when she saw this person. Could this person be Niu Yid? Hu Yintian immediately stopped when he saw this person. His expression was really complicated. How did he attract this great god? He quickly walked over and saluted. Junior Hu Yintian greets Senior One. He had no choice but to admit defeat. This person could even deal with his father, so dealing with him was a piece of cake. At this time, Yin Yu also quickly rushed over and cupped her hands to Wen Lanfeng. Senior One. When Lanfeng ignored Hu Yintian and slightly nodded to Yin Yu quickly walked over to Temptress and looked her up and down. Are you alright? Temptress shook her head. Fortunately, the Phantom Grand technique passed down from generation to generation in Magic Illusion Palace was still useful. Otherwise, she would have suffered some losses. Yin Yu saw that she was fine and hurriedly said, Quickly thank Senior Wen Lanfeng. He is the world's second strongest Wen Lanfeng? The Enchantress of 100 Charm was startled. She hurriedly bowed and said, Thank you, Senior Wen. In her heart, she was hesitating whether she should inquire about Yu Qianqiu or not. When Lanfeng just glanced at her indifferently, and then stared at Hu Yintian. If you dare to cause trouble again, tell Hu Changsho to be ready to collect your corpse. He left a cold snort and disappeared. Hu Yintian stood there with an awkward expression. There was no reason for him to lose face today. Yin Juexing and Man Who were secretly amused. This guy didn't lure Niu Yid out, but he lured Wen Lanfeng out. He was really unlucky to have shot himself in the foot. The crowd didn't dare to make a noise until Wen Lanfeng left. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. They looked at Yin Yu with eyes full of awe. Looking at what happened just now, it was obvious that Yin Yu asked Wen Lanfeng to come forward. Heavens! This woman is really not simple. She can actually ask Wen Lanfeng to stand up for her. In an instant, the Sleeping Spring Mansion's weight in everyone's heart rose to another level. Who would have thought that apart from Niu Yid, there would also be Wen Lanfeng supporting them? Together with Yin Baikong, that would make 3 late-stage soul formation experts. Hu Yuntian's expression darkened as he stared at Yin Yu with a venomous gaze. He smiled coldly and said, Headmaster Yin truly lives up to your reputation. This Hu has learned a lot today. If there is a chance, I will come back to support you. After he said that, he swung his arm and left. Yin Yu couldn't help but bitterly smile. No matter how she tried to explain this matter, it was useless. Today, the enmity between her and Hu Yuntian had been sown. After Hu Yuntian left, Yin Juexing and Man Who also stood up and left. Before leaving, Yin Juexing took a deep look at Yin Yu and memorized her appearance. The reason why he agreed to Hu Yuntian's request was that he wanted to meet this head Yen, who was on good terms with Niu Yud. Perhaps he would be useful in the future. It should be known that Niu Yud had caused him a lot of trouble. Niu Yud had almost deprived him of the freedom to walk freely in the cultivation world. Many people were eyeing him covetously. What happened here spread in cornucopia that day, when Lanfeng actually came forward to support Spring Slumber Loft. Spring Slumber Loft's reputation skyrocketed again. Somewhere under a big tree in the primeval forest outside cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu sat there in a daze for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. It wasn't until he smelled a strong fragrance of meat that he came back to his senses. He pulled away a pile of fire and pulled out a lump of burnt soil from the ground. Breaking open the soil, a white roasted pheasant was revealed. Waving the elegant fragrance in the air, he immediately grabbed the pheasant and wolfed it down. Yin Baikong invited him to go to the immortal world again. Although he couldn't go to the immortal world, he still had a way to spend some time to roast a pheasant. Moreover, his skill was exquisite, so any kind of method would do. After fooling around for half a day, he ate and drank to his heart's content. He wiped away the grease at the corner of his mouth, rubbed his stomach and sighed. Life. There's still a long way to go. He patted his buttocks and sighed. On the god of wealth peak, Yin Baikong welcomed him with a big smile. He cupped his fists and said, Brother Niu, you're indeed punctual. His worried heart was finally at ease. His gaze inadvertently fell on Yu Qianqiu's head, and he was startled. Yu Qianqiu wanted to say a few polite words, but after seeing Yin Baikong's reaction, he subconsciously touched his head. There was something as soft as cotton. He casually took it down to take a look. It was actually a brown pheasant feather. Damn it! He must have gotten it when he was slaughtering the pheasant. Yu Qianqiu casually tossed it away, and the wind blew it away. He laughed and said, It's just a chicken feather. He then took out a storage bag and handed it to Yin Baikong. There are 25,000 limit-breaking pills in here. You can count them. Yin Baikong was pondering about the problem of the immortal world's chicken feather when he was suddenly pulled back to reality by the 25,000. He injected his divine sense into the bag and saw that there were indeed 25,000 limit-breaking pills. He couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. This bag was worth 50 billion high-grade spirit stones. He asked in confusion, Brother Niu, what do you mean? To be honest, you're only buying 5,000 at a time. It's too risky for me to travel back and forth between the immortal world and the mortal world. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the storage bag in his hand and said, Of the 25,000, 5,000 were bought by you. As for the remaining 20,000 pills, I used my good reputation to get them on credit. I promised to give them the money within 2 days. Can you sell them all within 2 days? If not, I'll return the goods to them first. Otherwise, it'll ruin my good reputation. Yin Baikong was stunned for a while. Then his old face blossomed into a smile. Not to mention 2 days, he could even sell them all in 1 day. Currently, the limit-breaking pills were in short supply in the market. Not to mention 20,000, he could even sell 100,000. Although none of the 300 countries' powers were richer than his World Commerce Association, it was not a problem for each of them to take out 1 billion to buy the limit-breaking pills. Pooling together, they would have 300 billion. These 20,000 pills were only a few tens of billions. Most importantly, he had to pay before taking the goods. He was always on tenterhooks and taking risks. Now all the goods were in his hands. He didn't have to worry about not being able to sell them. What was there to worry about? This was simply giving him money. Within 1 day, Yin Baikong passionately raised a finger and said solemnly, I'll deliver the 24 billion high-grade spirit stones to Brother Niu on time. If you can't sell them, my World Commerce Association will think of a way to pay for them. It will not affect Brother Niu's reputation in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu nodded seriously and said, Good, then it's settled. If you go back on your word, don't blame me for being hostile. These words carried a hint of warning. Yin Baikong's eyes flashed and he laughed. Brother Niu, don't worry. Just come back within 1 day to get the money. Go back to your work. I won't disturb you anymore. Just as Yu Qianqiu turned around, he turned back and said, I found Yu Qianqiu before I came. He's on his way here. He should be able to reach the World Chamber of Commerce in 2 days at most. I've gathered 5,007 treasure pills for him. Brother Ian, you better pay him as soon as possible. I got those things on credit this time. 7 treasure pills are worth 2 million per pill. 5,000 of them are worth 10 billion. Adding the limit-breaking pill, it's a total of 34 billion. Will Brother Ian have any problems with such a large sum? If it's not convenient, you can tell me now so I can deal with it. Ian Baikong thought for a moment. 34 billion. The 5,000 pills that he had previously ordered could be delivered to the buyer. So he was still short of 29 billion. In other words, he had to sell 15,000 pills in one day and convert them into 30 billion. Adding the 5 billion, it would be enough. As for the remaining 10,000, he was prepared to hold back. He couldn't put out too much as he had to maintain everyone's desire to buy. Moreover, he had to prepare some for himself. When Niu Yud's next batch of goods arrived, he would hold back a little more. Brother Niu, don't worry. I won't hold you up. Ian Baikong smiled and promised. When Yu Qianqiu's 7 treasure pills arrive, I'll hand over the money with him. Go back to your work. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and floated down the mountain. Ian Baikong watched him leave and muttered with a cold smile. What credit? Who knows how much these pills are sold for in the immortal world? Then he shook his head disapprovingly. This wasn't something he should worry about. While Niu Yud was earning money, he was also giving him a huge profit. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Everyone was earning. He quickly brought Sikong's ultimate move up the mountain and arranged to sell the pills. As soon as Yu Qianqiu landed in the backyard of the Sleeping Spring loft, he saw Yin Yu and the temptress whispering to each other. He didn't know what they were talking about. When the temptress saw him, she bowed and greeted, Senior Niu. Yu Qianqiu nodded speechlessly. You're back. Yin Yu greeted. She sounded like a wife waiting for her husband's return. She walked over and said, When you weren't here, Senior Wen Lanfeng, Senior Lu Yanqing, and Mr. Nongzhu came to look for you. They came to look for me? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. Why are they looking for me? In his heart, he was guessing if Nongzhu had already revealed his identity. Please don't ruin my plans. They didn't say why they were looking for you. Yen Yu looked at the temptress and said, They helped us solve some problems. Yu Qianqiu followed her gaze and looked at the temptress. He frowned and said, What's wrong? Yen Yu told Yu Qianqiu about how Hu Yuntian wanted to steal the 100 Charms beauty. Yu Qianqiu sneered as he listened. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he said, Hu Changshou's son, Hu Yuntian, is quite courageous. It looks like someone is tired of living. He was really angry. Fortunately, he was not there. Otherwise, no matter what Hu Yuntian wanted to do, he would kill the guy on the spot, no matter whose son he was. There was no room for negotiation in the heart of Yu Qianqiu, so he didn't have so many scruples. Although he didn't want to touch the temptress, he would never allow others to touch her unless she was willing. In that case, he would have nothing to say and would even bless her. In the worst case, the temptress was still his master's wife. Someone dared to flirt with his master's wife. How could he swallow this anger? He couldn't vent his anger without killing him. They were all in the cultivation world. It was impossible to survive by talking things out. Chapter 623. Yin Yu and Temptress looked at each other quietly and clicked their tongues. They guessed that Niu Yud was angered by Hu Yuntian causing trouble in his territory. Yu Qianqiu let out a sigh of relief and stared at Temptress. Don't go out and show your face anymore. I just got reliable news that the person you're looking for should come to Cornucopia in 2 days. Really? Temptress couldn't help but ask, looking a little surprised. Yu Qianqiu will come to Cornucopia? Yin Yu also couldn't help but ask. To be honest, she was also curious about Yu Qianqiu, who claimed to be the #1 expert below the soul formation stage. This person's cultivation was not high, but he was quite capable. He was just a tribulation passing stage cultivator, but he had stirred up the entire cultivation world. He was both arrogant and talented, so it was a pity not to meet him. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply, just nodded noncommittally, then turned and walked towards the bungalow. Yenyu shouted behind him. Mr. Nongju said to find them at Baiwan countries when families shop after you arrive. Got it. Yu Qianqiu didn't look back. He made up his mind to wait until he got the money, so as not to complicate matters. In front of Treasure Tower, as soon as the new notice board was put up, the whole cornucopia immediately boiled over. The World Chamber of Commerce would sell 15,000 limit-breaking pills in one go, and the original order of 5,000 would be delivered today. The most exciting thing was that, in order to reflect fairness and stimulate the activity of cornucopia, the World Chamber of Commerce would sell 500 shares of the pills to itinerant cultivators with no background. However, the purchase quantity was limited. Each itinerant cultivator could only buy one, and it was first come first served. As long as an itinerant cultivator could come up with enough spirit stones, as long as they lined up, they could buy one with the cornucopia access token. Repeat purchases were not allowed. It was also stated that disciples of various sects were not allowed to buy, and this opportunity was limited to itinerant cultivators. The conditions seemed harsh, but they respected reality. It should be known that there were not many rogue cultivators who could take out 2 million upper-grade spirit stones. It was already a great kindness for them to be able to take out 500 upper-grade spirit stones. The Ice Palace and Cloud Palace both had soul formation final stage cultivators behind them, and they only managed to get 100 of them last time. Not long after the sign was put up, the front of the treasure house was immediately overcrowded. Some rogue cultivators with some savings tried to squeeze in, not for anything else, but to buy a pill to quickly improve their cultivation. This kind of opportunity was not easy to come by. Usually, even if one had a lot of spirit stones, even if one could absorb enough spiritual qi, it would still take a long time to slowly refine it. Moreover, it might not be able to smoothly improve one's cultivation. However, things were different with the limit-breaking pill. As long as he had enough spirit stones, raising his cultivation by one level was no longer a dream. Itinerant cultivators who want to buy the restriction-breaking pill line up from the right side door. Don't block the normal transactions of the treasure tower. Line up properly. If you don't have enough money, don't go in and join in the fun. You are not allowed to cut the line. Otherwise, you will be killed. Mu Lianxiu shouted and swept his sharp gaze across the chaotic crowd, immediately suppressing those who wanted to squeeze in to take a look. Mu Lianxiu led the law enforcement team of the cornucopia, and there were more than a dozen tribulation transcendence cultivators standing on both sides to maintain order. All of them stared at the crowd covetously. The chaotic and crowded crowd quickly became orderly under the strong pressure. Those who wanted to fish in troubled waters did not have enough money. They just wanted to go in and see who had bought the spirit pill, so that they could remember who it was, so that they could snatch it in the future. In the end, they were frightened by Mu Lianxiu's kill, and immediately scattered in a large group. Many cultivators stood on both sides of the street and sighed as they watched the buying line. It seemed that there were less than 200 people in the queue who could take out 2 million. Obviously, everyone still had a chance to buy it. Unfortunately, although 2 million was just a drop in the bucket for those big forces, it was an astronomical figure for the rogue cultivators. The crowd of onlookers looked at the long queue with complicated expressions. Some people were envious, some were excited, some were depressed, and some were memorizing the people who went in to buy the spirit pill with flickering eyes. There were also the disciples of the various sects who had the money, but had no chance to buy it, because they had to buy it with an access token. As soon as the token was taken out, some simple information inside was enough to expose their identity. When they applied for an access token in the past, no one thought that there would be such a day. Brother Wang, as long as you have money, there is still a chance to buy it. Why don't you and I pool our money to buy one? What do you think? Someone in the crowd said. Another person sneered and replied, so what if we pool our money? There is only one limit-breaking pill. Should I give it to you or you? There is a lot of room for the limit-breaking pill to rise in value. Even if it is not easy to distribute between us, we can make a big profit by selling it. The first person said affirmatively. The eyes of the person who was called Brother Wang lit up when he heard that, and immediately pulled him out of the crowd. After a while, the two of them squeezed in again, and the latter held a storage bag and lined up at the end of the line. The two of them did not avoid the crowd when they spoke, so their words were heard by the people around them. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar, as everyone looked for suitable partners to pool their money. What a joke! If they did not take such easy money, there would be something wrong with their brains. The room for the spirit pill to rise in value was not just a little bit. Even a little bit of increase would be calculated in the tens of thousands of superior-grade spirit stones, right? As itinerant cultivators, it was difficult to earn hundreds of superior-grade spirit stones on normal days. If they could earn tens of thousands of superior-grade spirit stones in one go, wouldn't they be rich? It did not take long for the line of 500 people to be formed. There were men and women, and all of them stood in the line excitedly. In the end, the number of people in the line far exceeded 500, but there were still people joining in. Moreover, there were still many people flocking over after hearing the news. What was surprising was that the side door on the left of the treasure tower was open for the various sects to purchase limit-breaking pills in large quantities. However, it was deserted, and no one came to visit. This was the complete opposite of the heated scene from the last time, when the major sects were fighting over the limit-breaking pills. It was very strange. In the treasure tower, Jing Yuankong stood in front of the window and stared at the activity below. He let out a sigh. He could not help but admire his master's business methods. In fact, the two people downstairs were two people he had sent out, as per his master's orders. The two unfamiliar disciples of the World Chamber of Commerce had teamed up to put on a show. He had arranged several pairs of such people. He had previously received a secret report that the World Chamber of Commerce's unbridled accumulation of wealth had made the various lords very dissatisfied. Therefore, the various lords had gathered together to conspire, preparing to join forces to pressure Yin Baikong to lower the price of the limit-breaking pills. It was said that even Bing Qingzi and Hu Changsha were moved. After all, everyone wanted to buy enough limit-breaking pills. Although the price of the limit-breaking pills far exceeded 2 million per pill, they could not resist buying them in large quantities. That was a very large sum. When Jing Yuankong, who was in charge of the Cornucopia Guild, received the news, he was shocked and immediately went to God of Wealth Peak to report the situation to his master. When Yin Baikong heard the news, he indifferently faced the rolling sea of clouds and let out a disdainful snort, saying, "If you think you can force me to yield with just this tactic of joining forces to pressure me, then there would not be today's World Chamber of Commerce. To dare show off such insignificant tricks in front of me, you are looking down on me, Yin Baikong. As long as there are good things in hand, there is nothing that I, Yin Baikong, cannot sell." Yuankong immediately arranged this. After a series of detailed instructions, Jing Yuankong inwardly praised. Yin Baikong's plan was very simple. That was to create hype and raise the price of the limit-breaking pills. Although there were not many loose cultivators in the cultivation world who were rich, there were many of them. One person could not come up with a large amount of money, but when a few grains of sand gathered together, their combined financial strength was not a small amount. As long as the price of the limit-breaking pills was raised, it would make people feel that there was a huge profit to be made from the limit-breaking pills. Then, all the loose cultivators in the world would flock over. In terms of cultivation, Yin Baikong could not be ranked first in the cultivation world. However, Yin Baikong could easily use this kind of business method to suppress others. There was probably no one in the cultivation world who could surpass him. Because of this, many people had suffered losses in his hands. Many people called him an old fox behind his back, but there was nothing they could do about it. It was clear that Yin Baikong was not lucky to be able to support such a large World Chamber of Commerce in the cultivation world. Once the 500 limit-breaking pills were sold, it was guaranteed that those who wanted to join forces to pressure him would leave on bad terms. If you don't buy it, then someone else will. It's not like you can't sell it, so lowering the price was impossible. Jing Yuankong stood in front of the window with his arms crossed. Hurried footsteps came from the stairs behind him. A disciple came behind him and saluted. Master, all 500 limit-breaking pills have been sold in less than 2 hours. Jing Yuankong gazed at the dispersing crowd with dejected expressions, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Make the arrangements immediately. It's best if everyone in Cornucopia knows about it. Keep it a secret. Yes, disciple will make the arrangements immediately. The disciple turned and left. About an hour later, a shocking piece of news came out of the cornucopia. 2 rogue cultivators who had bought a limit-breaking pill together had sold the limit-breaking pill right away. The original price of a limit-breaking pill was 2 million high-grade spirit stones, but it was sold for 2.5 million high-grade spirit stones. The cultivators who pooled their money to buy the limit-breaking pill were all overjoyed. They had earned 500,000 high-grade spirit stones in a short time. To them, that was money that they had to spend many years to earn. Just as the rogue cultivators who bought the limit-breaking pill were in high spirits, another piece of news came that made them ecstatic. 2 rogue cultivators rented a stall to sell the limit-breaking pill. The price was 3 million high-grade spirit stones, but it was sold in less than an hour. This was not an unfounded rumor. Many people saw it with their own eyes. Oh my God! The price had risen by another 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Just when the itinerant cultivators were overjoyed, they heard that another limit-breaking pill had been sold for 3 million high-grade spirit stones. This was the 3rd limit-breaking pill that had been sold at such a high price. The rogue cultivators who pooled their money but failed to buy the limit-breaking pill were so frustrated that they almost vomited blood. Chapter 624. However, at this time Treasure Tower made a new announcement. Due to the unexpected number of wandering cultivators buying the limit-breaking pills, World Commerce had decided that if there were any leftovers from the 15,000 limit-breaking pills sold today within half a day, all wandering cultivators in the world would have the right to buy them. There was no limit to the number of people who could buy them, and they could buy them repeatedly, until they were all sold out. Once this news was announced, the vexed wandering cultivators who wanted to vomit blood immediately became spirited and rushed outside Treasure Tower to wait. This time they wouldn't miss this opportunity. If there really were any limit-breaking pills left, they had to line up in front. Jing Yuankong looked at the crowd gathered below Treasure Tower. This proved that his previous arrangements were effective. He relaxed and walked away from the window with a smile. On the top floor of the Blue Palace, Pei Fong's expression was unsettled. There had originally been dozens of lords gathered in the hall, but now there were less than 10 left. This time, he was the one who had contacted the various countries to pressure world commerce. More than 200 lords from various countries had reached an agreement not long ago, but now it had all become empty words. Previously, everyone had been optimistic that no matter how powerful world commerce was, they wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure from the various countries. It would be hard for Baikong not to lower the price. However, just as they were about to pressure world commerce, Baikong had suddenly made a fuss over the wandering cultivators. This caught the various lords unprepared and completely shattered everyone's hopes. Their tightly clenched fists had lost their target. If it was a normal power, everyone might have used force in this situation. No matter how reasonable you were, we would still force you to sell at a low price. What could you do? Who told you to be so incompetent? However, the world commerce led by Baikong wasn't a normal power. In addition, Baikong himself was a late-stage soul transformation expert. Once he forced the other party into a dead end, it would be very painful to bite. With a single order from him, the various countries would fall into chaos, and not many would be able to escape. Taking 10,000 steps back, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changsho were in an alliance with Baikong. If they were reasonable, they would definitely fight for their own benefits and work together with everyone else to pressure Baikong. This reasoning was that if you didn't lower the price when you couldn't sell it, you would obviously take the opportunity to extort money from everyone when you saw that everyone was determined to buy it. Although it was also a fallacious reason, it was still a far-fetched one. But now it wasn't that he couldn't sell it. Why should he lower the price? If you don't want to buy it, I'll sell it to someone else. It's fine as long as someone is willing to buy it. This is a very normal thing. With this reasoning, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu didn't get angry. After all, they couldn't possibly join forces with others to deal with their own allies. If they did that, not only would Yin Baikong fall out with them, who would dare to stand with them in the future? They were afraid that the next unlucky ones in the cultivation world would be the two of them. Someone didn't just want to deal with Yin Baikong. Once the power balance was broken, the weaker side would definitely suffer. Brother Pei, since everyone has left, there's no point for us to stay. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid we won't have a share of the limit-breaking pill. I will leave now. Yu Nantian cupped his hands to the rest of the people and left. Pei Fong said in a low voice, "What's the rush? If you can't buy it this time, there will be a next time." Hearing this, Yu Nantian paused and said with his back facing them, "I guess it is not easy to collect the herbs needed to refine the limit-breaking Dan. Do you think that the limit-breaking Dan can be sold without limit? Therefore, there is no harm in buying more in advance. We can talk about it next time." After saying this, he left. Look, Pei Fong's fat face trembled as he pointed at the direction Yu Nantian left. He looked at Qi Jiujuan and Ouyang Da and said, "It is because everyone has the same idea that we let Yin Baikong, that old fox, get his way. If we want to blame something, we can only blame ourselves for not being united." After he finished speaking, other than the three late spirit-severing cultivators, the other lords also looked at each other and left. This made Pei Fong tremble with anger. Ouyang Da sighed and said, "Are we not going to buy it this time? Which one of you is willing? I'm afraid that if we don't buy it, Yin Baikong will be even happier. He is not willing to sell the limit-breaking Dan to us. Even without the three of us, he can still earn his money. Buy it. We can't let that old fox's scheme succeed." Pei Fong gnashed his teeth and his face turned black. He couldn't understand why every time he tried to deal with Yin Baikong, it was easily resolved by him. Was it because he was useless, or was the other party more powerful? The side door on the left of the treasure tower was still empty 4 hours ago, but after the new notice was posted, it immediately became popular again. Disciples representing various forces came in and out. The doorstep was almost broken. 4 hours later, a notice was hung on the door. Today's 15,000 limit-breaking Dan has been sold out. Next time we'll be notified. The rogue cultivators on the street were depressed. Why didn't they see anyone buy it before? But in the blink of an eye, it was sold out. None of them knew that they had been played by Yin Baikong, and that they had been ruthlessly used. On the upper floor of the One Clan's shop, when Lanfeng dismissed the One Clan disciple who came to report the news, and turned to look at Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing. This matter is very obvious. Fatty Pei wants to mess with Yin Baikong in one go. This is not the first time. Nongzhu shook her head and said, "But Yin Baikong is indeed Yin Baikong. Fatty Pei is still lacking if he wants to spar with him." Lu Yanqing giggled and said, "No matter how strong Yin Baikong is, when he meets you, Nongzhu, he will still be defeated. Compared to you, he is still lacking." "You can't say that." Nongzhu waved her hand and sighed. "I know my own capabilities. I'm just a fox using the tiger's might. I'm still far from him. Yin Baikong is not afraid of me, but by Chang Chun, so he tolerates everything. Everyone knows this. You don't have to flatter me." Limit-breaking Dan. I wanted to buy some. But, when Lanfeng looked at Nongzhu and said, "Nongzhu, you said you would help me get a batch of limit-breaking Dan for free. You have to keep your word. There are a bunch of people in the Wen clan who are counting on me, and I'm counting on you. Seriously, can you really get the limit-breaking Dan from Niu Yid for free?" Nongzhu rolled her eyes and said, "Don't worry about it. I have a good relationship with Niu Yid. Since it's a pill that can be sold in large quantities, he will definitely give it to me if I ask him for a batch." "That's good." When Lanfeng heaved a sigh of relief. In order to protect the Wen clan in the future, even if he had no intention of getting involved, he had to fight for it. "Yes, I believe Nongzhu. It shouldn't be a problem for him to ask Niu Yid for some limit-breaking Dan." Lu Yanqing hid behind the green veil and smiled sweetly, then said seriously, "I wanted to buy some for research, But Lingfang Valley's income is not wide. It can't be compared to other forces. Since there's someone who doesn't need money, I won't waste my money. Nongju, you can't be biased. You have to give me a batch for free too. Because she knew the background of Niu Yud and Nongju, there was a hint of ridicule in her words. Nongju glared at her fiercely. Mo Xiaojun told him about what happened in Treasure Tower, leaving Yu Qianqiu stunned for a long time. Then he asked for some details. Only then did he understand that in this short period of half a day, Yin Baikong had been secretly competing with someone. It was obvious that someone was trying to stop Yin Baikong from selling the limit-breaking Dan. Looking at the situation, it seemed that the various countries had joined forces, but this was also reasonable. After coming back to his senses, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong. Perhaps anyone could think of a way, but to be able to counterattack in such a short period of time, and in such an orderly manner, defeating the opponent's plot in one fell swoop, this was not something an ordinary person could do. Well done! Yu Qianqiu smacked his lips as he reminisced, looked at Mo Xiaojun, who had a face full of confusion, and shook his head slightly. Those who had not experienced this level could only see the surface of the good and bad business. They could not taste the turbulence behind the surface. He had the experience of being a superior in his previous life, so he could naturally see that Yin Baikong had taken a stroll on the edge of the cliff. It was very thrilling. At this time, Sikongju arrived again, cupped his hands and said, "Senior Niu, my master invites you." There was no need to mention how gloomy he was. Now that he had become an errand boy, he even had to run to the brothel. Actually, even he did not know the story behind today's sale of the limit-breaking Dan. Yin Baikong did not tell him. Only Jing Yuankong and the disciples under him knew. Yin Baikong had his own ideas about which disciple should be in charge of which business. He would not let a disciple easily interfere with another party's business. Yu Qianqiu laughed. He knew that Yin Baikong was going to fulfill his promise to pay within a day. He had to admit that in terms of doing business, Yin Baikong's reputation was better than his own. But his own reputation was not bad either. He happily arrived at the God of Wealth Peak, and upon seeing Yin Baikong, he immediately cupped his hands and said, "Brother Yin, I really admire you. You played your hand beautifully today." Yin Baikong was slightly startled. He did not expect this guy to be able to see through the inside story. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. The tree desires peace, but the wind does not cease. I also want to do business honestly, but some people just like to cause trouble. I have no choice but to retaliate. Let's not talk about this anymore. It would be strange if you could do business honestly. Yu Qianqiu smiled but did not say anything. Yin Baikong waved his hand and pointed at the 24 storage bags on the bluestone platform. 24 billion high-grade spirit stones have been paid as scheduled. Brother Niu, please check. Oh my. I've made a fortune. I won't have to sneak around for money anymore. I can do other things with peace of mind. Yu Qianqiu's heart was pounding with anxiety as he put away the storage pouch on the bluestone platform with a smile. Then he looked at Yin Baikong and nodded seriously. Working with Brother Yin is really refreshing. I really did not choose the wrong partner. Haha, isn't Brother Niu the same? Yin Baikong's mouth was full of flattery, but in his heart he was thinking, as long as you are happy, there are some things that I have been holding back. After this busy period, it's time to think of a way for you to help me get some things from the immortal world that are beneficial to my cultivation. Chapter 625. Yu Qianqiu smiled. All right. I won't say much. You're busy, so I won't disturb you. However, I believe that Yu Qianqiu will arrive at the cornucopia in a few days. I hope that Brother Yin will keep to our previous agreement. Yin Baikong nodded. Of course, Brother Niu can rest assured. The money has already been prepared. Once Yu Qianqiu arrives, we will immediately exchange the goods. Good, you can continue with your work. Yu Qianqiu politely replied and floated down the mountain. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles as he walked up the mountain, looking around at the beautiful scenery of the world. His mood was very carefree. Standing under the pine tree, Chu Tian's eyes were filled with lofty sentiments as he murmured, "This world, sooner or later, will be mine. Whether it is when Lanfeng or by Changchun, none of them can stop me." As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived at the backyard of the Sleeping Spring building, he summoned Yin Yu and the 100 Charms Enchantress to the bungalow. Inside the room, Yu Qianqiu sat at the table and silently ate the fresh fruits on the plate. The two girls looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing why he called them over. After a while, the fruit plate was half empty. Yu Qianqiu picked up the white handkerchief on the table and wiped his hands clean. Throwing the white handkerchief to the side, he coldly stared at Yin Yu. "I hope you still remember what I said to you before. When are you planning to leave?" Yin Yu bit her lips. "Where do you think I can go after I leave? If there is a powerful force that wants to find me, where can I hide?" The 100 Charms Enchantress looked at the two suspiciously, not knowing why Niu Yid wanted Yin Yu to leave. Yu Qianqiu indifferently said, "I'll advise you one last time. Are you going to leave or not?" As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. Yin Yu's chest heaved slightly as she stared fixedly at Yu Qianqiu. After a long time she finally said, "If you take me with you, I'll leave. If you don't, I won't go anywhere." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. Then, he became determined and said in a deep voice, "Don't think that you can threaten me just because you know something about me. It's useless. I can give in to anything, but I won't give in to other people's threats. I have my own things to do, so it's impossible for me to bring you along. You'd better give up." These words were too hurtful to a woman's heart. The Enchantress of Allure, who was also a woman, silently looked at Yin Yu. Seeing a trace of distress flash across her face, she forced a smile and said, "In that case, I won't trouble you. I'll continue to stay in the Sleeping Spring loft. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about you." "Humph." Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Do you want to be a brothel keeper for the rest of your life? I've already stepped into the cultivation world. Do I have a choice?" Yin Yu chuckled as if she was very happy. She said, "Cornucopia still has some rules. Once I leave it, what will happen to me? A woman with no background, good looks, but low cultivation. Walking in the cultivation world will sooner or later become the plaything of God knows how many men. Senior Neo, you're also a man, don't you think so?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer her. He looked at the Enchantress of Allure with an expressionless face and said, "And you? I advise you to return to the cultivation world of China. Don't think about looking for that Yu Qianqiu again. That guy still has a lot of problems to solve, so he can't help you at the moment. If you're willing, I'll find someone to send you back safely." "Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Since I'm already here, I'd better stay and take a look." The Enchantress of Allure bowed slightly and tactfully refused Yu Qianqiu's kindness. Two women who don't know what's good for them. Yu Qianqiu suddenly stood up, leaving a cold snort, and strode out of the door. The footsteps outside the door suddenly disappeared, and then it was quiet inside and outside the room. Yin Yu suddenly raised her head and quickly ran out to the courtyard outside, but she couldn't see Niu Yid's figure anymore. She looked around in a daze, and her body swayed, and she almost couldn't stand, unbeknownst to her. The Enchantress of 100 Charm had appeared behind her and gently supported her. Yin Yu looked back with a little fear and asked, "Why did he suddenly say that today? Will he never come back?" At this moment, she didn't look like a shrewd boss lady at all. Men are all bad things. If he doesn't come back, then he won't come back. The Enchantress of Allure looked at her again and asked, "Do you care about him a lot?" Yin Yu broke free from her hands and smiled bitterly. "Big Sister Yi, can't he see that I don't want to leave here, and only want to be with him? Since he wants me to leave, why didn't he even give me some words to make me feel assured? Isn't it said that men like to say some sweet words to coax women? Why didn't he even say some perfunctory words to deceive me? Is it because I came from a brothel that he's so disdainful?" The reason why she fell in love with Niu Yid at first sight was because she saw Niu Yid accept Li Qiuxiang with her own eyes. Although Li Qiuxiang came from a brothel, he tried his best to save her, and didn't look down on brothel women in the slightest. This scene greatly moved Yin Yu, who also wanted to live a normal life as a woman. In addition, Niu Yid's unfathomable cultivation gave her a strong sense of security, and her stubborn heart muddle-headedly cheated. Once the floodgates of love opened, it couldn't be stopped. Otherwise, how could Nyoyit get into her bed so easily? Hearing this, the temptress suddenly burst into laughter. She rubbed her forehead and shook her head. "Little sister Yen, you're finished." After laughing, she grabbed Yinyu's hand and said with a firm look in her eyes, "Trust me, this kind of man. The reason why he's not willing to give you sweet words is because he already has a place for you in his heart. He has to take responsibility for every word he says to you, so he won't easily open his mouth. But then again, if he doesn't have you in his heart, he can leave if he wants to. Why would he come back to say these heartless words to you? There's no need." "Really?" Yinyu grabbed her hand, eager to confirm. The temptress raised her hand and tapped Yinyu's forehead and chuckled. "You're lucky to meet a good man. Don't worry. He's cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He won't leave you alone. What's the use of his heartless words? He's just lying to himself. If he has the ability, he'll never come looking for you. You don't have to worry. Just wait for him to come back." Yinyu was slightly stunned and suddenly burst into laughter. How could she not see this at the beginning? And it was precisely because of this that she was sure to defeat him. Just now, she was just muddle-headed by Nyoyid's heartless words. It was because she cared too much about him that she panicked. Yinyu bit her lip and murmured, "If you have the ability, don't come looking for me." The temptress looked at Yinyu with some envy. In the primeval forest outside the cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu once again appeared at the place where the pheasant was roasted last time. The ashes on the ground were still there, but the bones that were originally thrown there had disappeared. It was estimated that they were taken away by some animals. Yu Qianqiu's face was very long. Those two women made him very unhappy, and neither of them was easy to deal with. The temptress's feelings for him were a little ambiguous, and he still had some headaches until now. He tried to avoid it as much as he could. Yinyu. It was a little strange that a woman with a pure body could support such a big brothel. Which normal woman would run a brothel? Yu Qianqiu was originally very suspicious, and he dared not reveal his true identity to make arrangements. After meeting the temptress, he wanted to let her take Yinyu to the Huaxia cultivation world to hide first, and ask a reliable escort on the way, such as asking Nongzhu for help. However, these two women had steeled their hearts. "Do whatever you want, I don't care." Yu Qianqiu kicked a big tree fiercely twice to vent his displeasure. Suddenly, he looked up at the tree and saw a huge head poking out of the branches and leaves, staring at him with two big cold eyes. A large brown python flicked its tongue and slid down the tree trunk at high speed. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he guessed that his two kicks had awakened the sleeping python in the tree. Before the python landed on the ground, it rushed over and wrapped Yu Qianqiu with its nearly 10-meter-long body. Then it curled up, trying to strangle its prey. It was not strange to see such a big python in the primitive forest. Yu Qianqiu looked up at the python's gradually opening mouth and said coldly, "Yu Qianqiu is back, star flame fire spell." A ball of green flame suddenly exploded and swallowed both the man and the python. After a while, the green flame disappeared, and Yu Qianqiu was unscathed, but there was a pile of ashes on the ground. He did not even bother to look at it, and began to carefully remove the human skin mask on his face. Then he removed the force that suppressed his vocal cords and changed his voice. He loosened the muscles on his face, removed the hairband that bound his hair, put away the bracelet on his wrist, and took off all his clothes. He stood there completely naked, and a stream of water appeared out of thin air, wrapped around him, and quickly washed him. After washing up, he waved his hand, and the stream of water flowed into the dense forest. He took out another set of clothes and changed into it, and his hairstyle was restored to Yu Qianqiu's style. He looked like a new person. He looked around, and without hesitation, he quickly flew into the air. He looked at the god of wealth peak in the distance, and in a flash, he flew towards the treasure basin. Not long after, he arrived outside the treasure basin and landed between the two hanging bridges. He saw many cultivators coming and going on the bridge, which was hidden in the fog. Guan Zhongkai had brought him here once, so he was familiar with the way. He strolled along the hanging bridge and entered. After crossing the hanging bridge, he entered the cave. Yu Qianqiu walked straight into a stone room inside the cave and saw a few people registering to receive the treasure basin entry jade archive. He was not in a hurry and stood in line behind them obediently. When it was his turn, he said, "Give me an entry jade archive." Name school. The cultivator behind the table picked up a jade archive and asked as he wrote something on it. Yu Qianqiu, no school, a loose cultivator. Yu Qianqiu said plainly. As soon as he said that, the people coming and going in the cave all stopped in their tracks. Even the guards in the cave turned to look at him. The cultivator behind the table raised his head in surprise and said, "You're Yu Qianqiu. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."